Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I'm your host Liam, of course, and I am back with the inimitable Tim Bloom, and we are back to talk about the Big Book of Cyberpunk. It's been about a
Yes,
month, I think, since the first part.
yes. All of my fault.
Not all of Tim's fault, but we can put all the blame on him.
That's
Um,
fine.
so
I've read enough Cyberpunk, and I'm gritty enough to deal with whatever you want to throw on my shoulders. I
it's
can
like
take
up yours, man.
it. Yeah.
But yes, we're back for part two, which again, Tim and I were just talking. We think it's the longest part. We'll see if the video turns out to be the longest. Hopefully not. No, but it's part two, society. Actually, here I gotta do a plug thing real quick. But part two is society, and the introduction honestly is not the society introduction is not that worthwhile. It,
It's
it, it kind
not.
of introduces society. Duh, you get it,
And
and
I
then
wonder if the
yeah.
other introductions will sort of follow that mode, but I guess it will just depend on what the different. I don't know.
Yeah,
Very
but
matter of
we shall
fact.
see. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's just like kind of gives you again the stories though, so we might as well get into the stories ourselves. Again, it does the same. It does a thing where it starts the oldest story, and they really only pick like one story that you would consider pre-cyberpunk to like kick things off, and then you get into like the stuff that's like what you'd probably generally consider to be legitimate cyberpunk.
Hmm.
But the one thing that they start off with, I think this actually won a Hugo. Did this win a Hugo?
I
Um,
believe so, actually. I think it did, actually.
yeah, so it's the time considered as a helix of semi-precious stones, which is I could never remember the name of it honestly.
No, no. We had some very interesting titles this time.
Right? Yeah, we did. And then it's by Samuel R. Delaney, of course, who I believe is still alive actually.
I believe
Um,
so, but he must be sort of quite
he's old.
wizened. Yes, yeah, yes, yes.
Tim went for the
Yeah.
literary term. I went for the colloquial term.
Yes, he
Uh,
must be. Yeah, he had. Yes, of course.
yeah, so it's funny actually. This is the first thing I read by Delaney. I
Same.
wrote an essay on Delaney, having not read anything by him at one point.
Liam
Um,
got an A on that essay, by the
I got a
way.
B actually, but
Well,
I was happy enough with it. I focused on Delaney and Charles Saunders. I've read Charles Saunders, but
okay. Hmm.
um, it was a civil rights essay, and I was like, I got to make this something I actually want to write about. So I
Yeah,
talked
yeah,
about
that's
some
that's
stuff, but
actually yeah, and it's really interesting because obviously Delaney is a writer of significance, but yeah, I'd never read anything by him either. I don't think I'm positive actually. I can't think of anything
yeah.
by him.
Yeah, I have a few on my list I would like to get to. I hear mixed things about him
Same.
these days. So he's got some stories which are pretty close to Sword and Sorcery, like the Jewels of Actor, I think is one.
Oh, okay.
Um, and then, but I want to read Babel 17, I think it's called.
Yeah, I've heard his science fiction stories are rather complex, to say
Yeah,
the least.
and then there's Nova, which
Also
I hear
science fiction,
cited
right?
probably. Yeah, it is. That's actually that's probably as far as Delaney novel predecessor to Cyberpunk. Nova, I think, is like probably the big one as
Okay.
far as I'm aware. It has implants, I think, or something like
Oh,
that.
does it? Okay,
So
okay.
if I'm remembering correctly, again, I haven't read
Hmm.
it. So, um, but time considered as a helix of semi-precious stones is one of the longer stories here. It's a novella technically, um, and it's interesting. It's got the outsider protagonist thing going on. It was actually kind of confusing at first. I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, with the various names and identities, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I was like, who is this guy? Like, okay, he went to
yeah,
jail as a kid, I guess. What? I don't know what is going like,
yeah.
but now he's in like the subway or something.
Yeah, which is how, yeah, that sort of like early stuff that we're calling cyberpunk. It can be a bit sort of interesting and involved. Like the other one, the continuum one, I remember being
Mhm.
particularly. But yeah, so I guess the point is, he is a person who is like, I guess, a master of disguise, for a lack of a better term, and he is, he like very sort of quickly and fastly can like switch, change how he looks, his costume, his whole look, and all that. But I guess the point is he is trying to, he has some sort of hot item
Mhm.
that he is trying to get rid of.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's actually probably one of my least favorites from the batch, just because it's just like it's just a little all over the place.
It
I mean,
was.
I didn't dislike it, and like I said, I do want to read more about Delaney anyways. So, um, but it has some weird stuff though in it. Like
It
it like
does.
the time as, I mean, as the title says, as semi-precious stones is like kind of interesting and confusing at the same time. But
Yeah,
like,
because there
so,
is the society of like these. Is it? It wasn't like I forget what you call it in like sort of D&D, like thieves can't, but it was essentially it had something like that where like there
mm,
was like a code word which are those stones that you can use to like get for different information or get inside a place that you shouldn't be and all that stuff. And but I also did like I thought the sort of poet thing was very interesting. These like particular people who are sort of like poets who are like essentially celebrities and stuff like
yeah.
that. I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, it was not my favorite story, but it was an interesting one.
Yeah, it has some cool stuff. I mean, I from my notes here, I mean, like the style, there's like lights and hair that people wear, or there's the
Yeah.
transparent blouses like that those
Yeah, it
young
was
girls are
interesting.
wearing, and
Yeah.
they giggle and like get shy about it. And it's just
Yeah.
like, okay, that's weird. There's like essentially like a psychopath thing, right? Like or like
Yeah,
Minority
actually,
Report type of thing.
yeah, you're actually
So,
absolutely right. Yeah, and you're right. And I guess that's actually true. And I guess the sort of major cyberpunk aspect of it is that like they talk about how I think this might have been something that came up in another story. But like there's like this algorithm where they're like the algorithm told us that you are probably going to commit a felony, and so
mhm.
by following the algorithm, of course that would lead us to you and all that sort of thing. Being
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So it's got some good exploration it's doing. Now, I wasn't like super entertained, but I think the work Delaney is exploring here is interesting. And to start off, I guess this isn't specifically about the story so much, but there's less sex in this part
there
of
is.
the Big Book of Cyberpunk than
All
there
right,
was in part one.
which is surprising. There is. Tune in.
Yeah, it I don't know. Yeah, I like it. I like it's told in first person. I think that works pretty well with it. And it's interesting getting this character that is like he didn't just go to jail or when he was young. I think he worked on a dairy farm and he was like
Yeah,
in foster care,
yeah,
right? So it
something
was
like
like
that.
you very much get this outsider. Like it's someone that like not just an outsider though, but like that's pretty common, today, right? I mean, like
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I guess going to jail when you're a teenager, but I mean, like, and maybe not the dairy farm, but being in foster care or being
yeah,
without
of
parents
course,
or something.
yeah.
Um, so, and then it's just like, but also at the setup that's like, I don't know. Yeah, it's an interesting story. I mean, I did enjoy it. It just wasn't my favorite as well.
But how does
So,
that link it to society? You think just because of like what was going on and like the keeping up like the fancy dinner parties and like like selling like things and I guess so because he actually becomes like a career criminal, right? Instead
mhm.
of dealing with that and how like the gut or the police force or whatever, their CIA or whatever it was, I forget what it's called, the HCE or something like that. Like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
idea that they have to work together because if the things that they do, they're going to cross paths and all that sort of thing. So I guess so.
Right. Yeah, that's also a funny critique. It seems like a funny critique on government. They see, I mean, the CIA is essentially a crime organization, right? I mean,
Yeah, of
so like,
course.
it's like,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's an interesting overlap there, and yeah, you're right with the thieves can't thing type of thing. Rather,
I
was
forget
pretty
what it was
interesting too.
called.
But yeah, no, it has some interesting things. Again, like I said, it's interesting to read, and I don't have a problem reading stuff for interesting points or historical value. You know what I mean? Like I
Same.
wasn't super entertained, but it wasn't wasted time. I didn't feel like so.
Right. Though the anthologist did say that every story in this book was entertaining, and take that up with him. No, but
Yeah,
no,
no.
but seriously, yeah, of course. I think it's a good thing if you're seeing the sort of trend of something, you are likely you're not. It's an anthology. If you like every single thing in an anthology, then there's probably you're not doing it's
There's
like
something
yeah.
going on. There's something.
Yeah.
Going on. You're
Especially
probably
one like
paid.
this.
No,
Yeah. Yeah,
you're
probably. Especially one. This is it's like massive, of course.
right. Yeah. Okay. But if you have any other thoughts on that, you can share them now, or we will go to the next story.
Let's go to the next one. Which one is that? Oh, okay.
It's Cyberpunk. Yeah. the Cyberpunk, which this is a story I've read before, actually.
Okay.
One of the few in the anthology I have read before. And it's by Bruce Bethke. I'm not sure how to say his name.
Yeah.
For those unaware, though, it's Bruce BB. I don't think you know. And so he coined the term cyberpunk
With this story?
with this story. It was later coined again, not really, right, but utilized by some critic, and he called the writers cyberpunks. But it's an interesting story. So it came out in 1983. It's also told in first person, but this one is very cyberpunk.
Yeah, literally, capital P.
Yeah, and it's not like a lot of cyberpunk. We've talked about this before. It like devolves into the man essentially, right? It's this noir detective type of thing, right? All right, Kusanagi on the background right here, right? I mean,
right.
So I mean, like these are just punk kids, right? And they're doing cyber things. It's like early internet crap almost, you know.
Literally, yeah, I would say so. Like, yeah, with big, huge like laptops and things, trying to like break into like the library or something,
Yeah. And then, but they steal from banks. So I mean, which is I don't know. It's funny. I think. I mean, it's not funny, right? But it's like angsty, like
absolutely. Angsty is the right word, and very sort of like screw authority and parents don't understand and all that sort of thing. Because at the end of it, it ends with there's like this major conflict between one of the punks and their parents, and he's like doing stuff with like their bank, their accounts and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't have a ton to say about this one, and that might be just because it was my second time reading it. And I'm sure there's a lot of stuff you could look through. It has a lot of like, if I remember correctly, like slang that's kind of like interesting.
Yeah, which is a hallmark, I guess, of Cyberpunk.
Right. Yeah, and eventually, in the end, to spoil it some, he gets sent off to military like school, which is funny.
Right. So you're getting into he's a punk, and then they send him off to military school.
Yeah. So, but I enjoy this story, and it's not very long. So I mean, and you can read this one online if anyone is just interested in this one. That's where I read it originally. I just found it on Bethka's website, I think. So, with his website that looks like it hasn't been updated since 1998.
Yeah, he probably doesn't write anymore, does he?
I would guess not, but I mean, for all I know, he could. And just no one cares, I guess. So, I mean, but I don't know. Actually, that's a good question. So, but I don't have much to say besides it's a classic, and I enjoyed it. I mean,
that one definitely. Like a lot of these, you sort of like scratch your head about and wonder what's going on or what the author is trying to say. But that one, you don't. And I find that like a lot of these are kind of like, I don't know, maybe it's because it's society, or a lot of these are kind of like slice of life cyberpunk stories, I think. If that was, and I felt that was kind of one of them.
Yeah. Speaking of slice of life, this next one is more of the absurd cyberpunk, though.
Which I enjoyed. I enjoyed this.
Yeah, no, and it's really short too, if I'm remembering correctly. So it's like it gets you this heavy hit of like absurdity, and then it's over. So it's like if you don't jive with it, then you're fine. So but that's Hostile Takeover by Craig Padower. I assume that's something how you say some way close to how you say his name.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very much absurd, which is interesting that it's 85 and it's this absurd cyberpunk already, right? Because like Cyberpunk becomes a parody of itself very quickly, and a lot of people point to something like Snow Crash. I was like, this is years before Snow Crash. I mean,
which is it actually is, isn't it? Yeah, and I guess like absurd is the right word, right?
I would say there's penis guns in this. I mean, so like, which is funny, right? It's a gun, right?
Yeah.
No, it's get it. Okay, no, so,
it is a gun. It is a gun.
It reminded me of the boob guns or whatever from Austin Powers.
Oh, yeah. That is kind of cyberpunk, I guess.
Yeah, that part is.
Yeah. So you did not. What are your thoughts on this one?
It's just really over the top, right? I mean, like, there's a ton of Japanese influence, which isn't super surprising.
No.
Again, there's the penis guns. There's a drag queen in a kimono, I think, at one point.
Yeah.
Which seems to fit everything.
Yeah.
There's a living blow up sex doll. I think.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
like implied that she has a soul or something like that. So
Yeah. And
it
then like, yeah, like and then like there's like robot bodyguards that are made out of like balloons.
yeah.
And yeah, so I guess it's basically like these for lack of a better word, I guess not pimps so to speak, but they're like going to war against each other for who has control of the neighborhood.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like a gang war, but at the same time it feels very much like the Wild West, right? Like that there's
Yes.
not actually anyone in control here.
No.
It's just a big mess. So
Yeah.
it's very much leaning to like anarchy, I'd say.
I did think there was some very nice language and stuff in this though that I really thought was really cool. Because it mentioned something about like the balloon bodyguards floating away, gasping for one day again to have helium and being sagging and emaciated. I thought that was great. But I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It seems like something in some ways, if you were just change a few things, probably it seems like something I'd read today almost. You
Yeah.
know, in some of the places I like to hang out, and I'd be like, okay, yeah, I could see it. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of poetic, but it's just like, what the hell are you smoking?
Exactly.
Like
Exactly.
so, so yeah, I enjoyed it. I
I
mean,
did
it
too.
wasn't a favorite. It wasn't a favorite of mine, but I did enjoy it.
I am
There's
looking forward to hearing what your favorites are.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. No, I was gonna, trying to figure that out.
Um,
I'm actually jogging my memory as we go over
mhm.
these, but so um, but yeah, should we go into the next one then?
Yeah.
You like
Speak.
this next one a
I
lot.
did.
Yeah, yeah.
Speaking
So
of, what are you smoking? I thought this was awesome.
this is a very interesting one. Yeah, this is
Yeah, this one I know what's going on, but I very much don't know what's going on. Yeah, so this one, like the main character, the name of the story is Rats. 1986. I've never heard of James Patrick Kelly before.
same.
I have
Yeah,
to say. And the main character is pretty much this literal rat because it mentions having like sharp teeth and a tail.
it's so confusing.
But it
I
might be
think it's confusing,
like a
and it's done like
cyberpunk
that on
because
purpose, right?
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it reminds me of I can't not mention Library at some point. It reminds me of this story by Library I read. It's
Hmm.
actually the most recent Library story I've read, and it's The House of Mrs. Delgado,
Hmm.
and it's short as heck. It's just a couple pages, and the idea is that there's these girls that live in this house, right? And they're naked and sexy or something like that,
Hmm.
and but in reality they're just cats, right? Like you can kind of tell, but it's not said that they're cats until like the very last word or something
Huh.
like that. And they're like, okay, now they're cats. I wasn't sure if it was like actually like sexy naked ladies or cats, like
I might have to
right.
read this, not because of I'm sexualizing cats, but I just have curiosity.
Well, Liver loves his cats and weird sexy stuff.
Good for him.
But yeah, rat. I had a hard time telling. Is this guy actually a rat? Like, what is going on here?
I
Like,
wonder if I mean it's hard. Like this is 1986, so I guess you can't really sort of chump it together. But I wonder if it's that whole weird sort of like cosmetic thing and changing and
mhm.
altering yourself, that you get in Cyberpunk and like changing your physical features. But I don't know. But it mentions that I feel that this is a rat person, but I'm
Yeah.
sure it's vague on purpose. But yeah, so he is coming in. He was on a plane and he uh, swallowed some drugs of some sort,
Yeah.
which these drugs at the same time pretty much turn people into zombies. Right, because like there's like these like half, not even half, these like lumbering people who are like taking over the city that it takes place in, and he needs
hmm
to get back to his apartment.
Yeah.
And it's essentially him, avoiding like a detective and avoiding like the sort of bodyguard of the person who he got the drugs from or whatever, who was like a little
Yeah.
girl, I think.
Yeah. This is little girl spook.
And he has to like get back, but there's also, because this is where I thought was really cool, it's very almost comic booky, because like they like they have to find a taxi, and then like there's an old lady who drives a taxi, but the taxi has like arms on it, has like guns on it, and they're like mowing down the zombie people as they get to his house. It's ridiculous, but I think ridiculous in a very cool way.
Yeah. No, I did enjoy this one. I mean, one thing about the rat thing, regardless if he's just a rat-like person, if he's a rat, or if he's just a man describing himself as a rat,
Yeah.
essentially, or as being described as one, The idea, I think, is to say that essentially he's less than a man somehow,
Yeah.
right? So, but he's an interesting character, and I mean, the drugs inside body turns out it goes exactly where you think it goes, and
Yeah,
so,
and you're right. Less than a man for sure. They talk about how he likes to live in the darkness underground,
mhm.
away from people. Yeah, definitely a very outsider type character.
We should probably check in on Mr. James Patrick Kelly. See if he
Oh,
feels like. Uh,
Collier on the air.
yeah. So, but I thought that little girl I thought was funny, but also reminded me of there's a character like that actually in a novel called Beyond Rejection by Justin Leiber, who's the son of Fritz Leiber. Um,
Okay.
and her name's Candy in that novel, but it's just like this little girl that's like 11 or something like that, but in reality, it's like the mind of an 80 something year old
Yeah.
in like this 11-year-old's body, and she's a spook essentially. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, it's an interesting story because he's living like a rat, but you can actually tell that he's making somewhat of a decent living,
Yeah.
right? He's not what you call a good guy, but the whole thing's
No.
kind of messed up anyways. So, is
Right. And
anyone a
then
good guy? I don't know.
right. And
So,
there's a detective after him, and the detective is addicted to these drugs as well.
mhm.
Yeah. And yeah. So these drugs are sort of running rampant, and people are going, insane in the streets. And
Drugs, man. I guess they'll do that to you or
they
something.
will. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's interesting. It's interesting. It's probably an interesting like metaphor that basically all of society is addicted to this drug. I mean, like
Yeah.
we're all insane, I guess.
Which I guess a major part, which I'm learning, I guess, which makes sense. That makes sense as well. But like, obviously, drugs are in a lot of these stories. Maybe all of
Right.
them. I don't recall, but probably all of them.
Well, they're in the next
So,
one, I'm pretty sure as
which
well.
one?
So,
What's the?
uh,
Oh, okay.
Arachne by Alicia
Yes.
Mason. Yeah.
Yes.
So, if we can turn to that one, I guess if you're ready.
Mhm.
Um, but no, I'm glad you liked Rat. I liked Rat too. It wasn't a favorite, but
I don't know if it's a favorite as I
yeah.
think about stuff, but I really, really, I liked it. I remember thinking I really, really liked it. I have to think about that because there were some I definitely did like. I have to think about it a
Well, I'm
lot.
glad that we get to talk about him because it helps. Um, but yeah, Arachne. This is something I'm not 100% sure, but Lisa Mason wrote a novel called Arachne,
I
and
was
I
looking
don't
into
know if
that and
this
I'm
is like,
confused.
yeah, is this an
Yeah,
excerpt? Is this an original version she expanded into a novel? I don't
yeah,
know. But there's a novel called Arachne, so I mean,
yeah.
like,
Like, is it a collection? I was wondering that myself. Yeah,
yeah, right,
I'm not sure because I saw it that it was on Goodreads. Yeah, I'm not sure.
yeah, it's interesting, but it's about a girl named Carly Quester. I think she's 25. Uh, she has this problem where she's blacking out essentially, right? When I think she's like working, right? And she's like online though for
Yeah,
this
she's a
work thing.
lawyer.
Right. And so she can't be blacking out essentially, right? I think she wets herself at the start. Is that
I think so. I think
yeah.
she did when she.
Right.
Yeah, I think so.
Which honestly I thought that helped really ground the story, with I don't know why, but I was just like, oh, like yeah, she's a little pathetic. Okay. I haven't wet my
Yeah,
pants in public like that, but I mean
yeah. It's
like
been a while.
I mean I can feel for her. Like
I feel for anyone who wets their pants in a public space. Honestly, I'm not even
yeah.
joking. Yeah, yeah, and it's definitely it's got that sort of cyberpunk thing. They or all these do. They like log into the system to like practice law in like a digital space.
Mhm. Yeah, and the law itself seems a little obtuse, maybe. I don't know if that's the right way to describe it. I mean, law itself is not your friend, I feel like these days.
Right. And
So,
she works for one of those big, huge companies who are like destroying the little guy. She's like one of those big,
mhm.
huge corporate firms.
Right, yeah. And the problem with her blacking out though is that she could lose her job, right? So that's like what she's trying to avoid. That's essentially the point of the story. She's got this faulty programming almost. Um, and it's interesting because she's essentially one of those people that's like you said though, that's smothering the little guy. She's basically like, I'm just doing my job type of
Hmm.
person,
Hmm.
right? And she works for this corporation, and it's killing her, right? I mean, like,
Yeah, yeah,
so there's probably something to get there, but and right. So she goes to drugs essentially, right?
yeah.
So
And yeah, she's like a brand new lawyer, one of those big, huge firms, like where you have to be, winning cases and stuff, where you can lose your job. And it talks about how dog eat dog world thing, and how many people she fight to get in this position. And so she's really desperately trying to fix herself so she cannot lose her job, pretty much, like you said.
Yeah, and it definitely has. I mean, it's got a lot of struggle in it. It's her and kind of dealing with trauma. You know, and the idea I got from it is that everyone's victim, and it's interesting that that's tied with what a big focus of the story is law, right? Cyberpunk law, essentially, which
Which
is
is really
interesting.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting. Yeah, it was interesting to see something that wasn't like noir or
Uh-huh.
young
Yeah.
sort of like street bustling stuff. I thought this was very interesting. Like when I think of Cyberpunk, I do not think of this. And
Yeah.
this is one that, even if I didn't, however I felt about it, I thought it was an okay story, but however I felt about it, I thought this is a kind of story that I really value reading a book like this for, because it's a different sort of take. And I think I don't know, it seems really original to me. And I think that's why I was sort of like, I was trying to sort of digest Cyberpunk and however I could do it. And this
Mhm.
was a very different story. And this sort of, I think is important to, when I think of Cyberpunk, I don't think of, law or
Right.
lawyers and stuff.
Right. No, I think you did that's a great point, great encapsulation, and yeah, I'm glad it was in here. It's an interesting one. I probably wouldn't have read otherwise. So
Absolutely not. But it was very interesting.
yeah, no, yeah, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. It was an interesting one. I feel like I had something else to say, but I forgot what it was. So, um,
Sorry.
oh no, you're good. But if we can go to the next one, I
Okay.
guess, to make a good time here. Axiomatic by Greg Egan. Okay, I haven't read anything else by Greg Egan yet. I've been wanting to though. He has I think maybe the best way to call it is like a big idea cyberpunk novel called Permutation City. Um, and I've been wanting to read that. I think that came out after this. Axiomatic is kind of he's Australian, I think, if that matters. But he's but
It
it
does.
okay, yes, it matters. No, it it deals with programs, right? These axiomatics are kind of these programmings that give you different experiences, right? They give you different feelings. You can experience being gay if you're straight, or straight if you're gay. You can experience a religion, right? I mean, like,
Yeah.
or a belief system, right? That you just don't follow, and
Right.
that's interesting. I think.
I think it's really interesting. Yeah, and it can like make you like more assertive if you want to be. It can
Mhm.
like even change your personality a bit.
Yeah, and I mean, which is an interesting premise, right? I mean, like, but then he takes it as well. He takes it to a certain path. This story is very much not just as a weird, like, what the hell is going on here? It's very much about revenge.
Yeah.
So I mean,
It's very grounded. Yeah, I guess that's Cyberpunk tends to be. But yeah, it's a very personal story. I was actually, well, I guess it could have fit itself too, honestly. But like but I guess society works because it's about taking these axiomatics. So,
yeah,
and everyone is taking them. So,
yeah, right. He it's set in Australia as well, but essentially he lost his wife in a bank robbery. I don't know how anyone in Australia got a gun. No, but just joking.
true.
Anyways, so he lost his religion essentially
Mhm.
after that, if I remember correctly. But he still believes human life to be sacred, which I guess makes sense, right? That's pretty normal. But I mean, but he contemplates revenge, killing, you know, the
The
person
person
that
who
killed
murdered
her.
his wife. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, this story made me really anxious, actually, which is why I liked it. I
Really?
think, like, I was
Talk
reading, I
about
was like,
that.
"Holy crap, I'm anxious reading this." It's like I don't, like like it's not a good thing, right? Like that's like the thing. What's going on, right? Like you can like, okay, I can convince myself this is cool, and I love badass revenge killings. I love the Northmen, and I love sword and sorcery, right?
Mhm.
But like but, I mean, here it just feels wrong, you know what I mean? Like, feels
Interesting.
right to a point, you know what I mean? But, like, if I remember correctly, he gets this axiomatic thing to make it so he's more likely to kill someone, right?
Yes.
And so I'm like, "Oh, that's probably where it's wrong because he knows it's wrong, hence why he's getting this axiomatic," right? Or
Yeah.
at least he knows he himself wouldn't do it,
Yeah, it
right?
essentially like makes him more like cavalier, who cares, like in the
Mhm.
moment, not to sort of sweat the small stuff, sort of in a sense. To like give him, yeah, essentially to make him in the state to kill someone. Yeah, that's actually a good point. That I can see why that would make you a bit unsettled.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also these other. There's a quote actually I shared here from this axiomatics where they can make you. There's sometimes these axiomatics are not for this like wanton life that we sometimes decadence as we imagine cyberpunk to be, but also
Mhm.
like dystopian almost, right? It says like this says blue tastes like mother's milk, which is so random to me. Anyways,
Yeah.
and it says I will succeed. I am happy in my job. There is a life after death. Nobody died in Belson. Four legs good, two legs bad. And I'm just like, so,
Yeah, like I don't know if you remember because you were a bit younger than me. Like you're going to like an FYE or something like that, or like it kind of was like a music shop where you could buy like CDs or something like that, and like you just go in and there's just like all this display of like axiomatics and stuff. So you just go in and you can like take your pick. It was like a I don't know like a music store or something.
huh. Yeah, no, I've never been in one of those. At least I don't remember being in one. So
I am
it's
50
essentially the
years
same.
older than Liam, so
Yeah, 50, a whole 50. It's his sorcery that makes him look
it
really young.
is.
So,
Yes,
um,
yes. This is illusion magic.
yeah, but no, I enjoyed this one. I really did. It made me want to read Permutation City sooner
I'll have to
when I
look
read it.
into
So,
that. Yeah, I actually did a very cool engage thing, and I wrote it down right
wow,
here. I know.
nice job.
Thank you.
Hey, do you have any other thoughts on that one or?
No, I think that one you hit it on the head. Yeah, it sort of rather makes you. Now I'm anxious. So I wasn't even thinking of it like that. But it's true. It's this very personal thing about changing who you are to accomplish stuff, and how that could be a bad thing, I guess, or it could be a good thing, depending. But yeah, like, oh, well, this will help me learn French, or this will help me murder someone. So you can
Right.
see
Yeah.
the sort of difference there, I suppose.
Quite a difference for sure.
Only a
Um,
little.
only a little. Okay. Interesting. No. Oui. No. Anyways, the next one is Consumer Igni, um,
Yes.
by Harry Polkinghorn. Um, I'm looking at this one now because I don't remember much about it.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. I will admit, I find this, which is gonna almost sound weird, but I feel like the cyberpunk stories that are incredibly technical are my least favorite, depending. The ones that have it just depends, I guess. But basically, this one, because this one was sort of interesting, sort of follow. It was kind of all over the place because the language and the prose is like different specifically. I think because like it's about a detective who is in like I don't think it's South America, but particularly like a place, maybe a
he's
place that's
he's on the border of like Mexico and the U.S. or
okay,
something.
okay,
They call
and
it
so
Calexico.
yes, Collectico, and so he's a detective going to store, which is a great name actually, a detective who is going to look into like a person of influence who is killed potentially by another person of influence.
Mhm.
And to do that, he has like this ragtag group of like internet punks, like a squad, who help him sort of migrate the this special part of this like free part of the internet that they have essentially.
Yeah.
And then they go to yeah, and then he finds some people to investigate why this happened. But it's really about, and I think Sharon even mentions this in the forward. It's about how like nothing really changes because it's people in power who are like fighting amongst each other, but it doesn't really affect anything. You know, and so yeah, it was pretty much a sort of detective story, but it has a lot of really involved poetic language that like talks about like the internet and the cyber world, like a lot of sort of very involved poetic imagery, which didn't really work for me because it kind of clashed, but I see like the sort of dichotomy.
Yeah, this is again, like I said, it's kind of what you did a good job at
Oh.
describing it there because I didn't really remember it
Mm-hmm.
much. Like it's kind of forgettable to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I don't remember like not enjoying like having a terrible time with it. It's rather short, I guess. Um, but I mean, yeah, there's a sickness, um, and there's like this weird like well the main character's
Oh,
name
I
is
forgot
like
about that.
Guy, I think, right?
Yeah.
Or Guy. Guy de Boer, right?
Yeah.
Guy de Boer. I'm just like, he's got a French freaking name. Why is he living here? I mean, yeah, I guess he could live anywhere, right? But maybe it's a reference to that short-lived French Empire in Mexico. I don't know.
Oh,
But
interesting.
I don't know. I mean, that's just me reaching, but maybe.
Maybe you
And
grab something. You never know.
there's also like a Mexican and China. They blame the Chinese.
It's a cultural.
Like
it's a blending of cultural,
yeah.
which I guess Cyberpunk is. There's something there above my head that I'm sure like the idea of sort of like multiculturalism and sort of like cyberpunk and like an advancement, because I feel as though those maybe go hand in hand in a way, at least in certain stories. But I could be talking out of my
bubble. No, yeah. One thing though, even though I don't remember much of this story much, it did remind me a little, just a tiny bit. Just a tiny bit. I'm trying to remember who the author is, so I'm looking it up right now. But there's a story, I don't know if you read it before, called The Hammond and the Beans.
No. What's it about? Is it a cyberpunk story?
It's not, no. It's a literary story, sir.
Oh.
It's
if I've read it, I've made myself forget I've read it. No. The Hammond and the Bean.
It's by Americo Paredes, so it's also on a border town, and it kind of involves a sickness as well with his one character, and it's kind of involved with the Hammond and the Beans. Is essentially this little girl doesn't speak enough English besides the Hammond and the Beans, right? Which is ham and beans, right? But
okay.
And so like, yeah, it's an interesting story. It's really short. It's from a perspective of like a kid. It has some interesting imagery in there. I remember we talked about it in one of my classes, an English class once, and like all my thoughts were like nowhere near anyone else's thoughts, but but yeah. Anyways, so anyway, no, that's off topic. I'm not.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
It's funny because there is this one. There's the rapture in some Christian things, right? Some Christian denominations focus more on it, right? But essentially, there's this point in the story where he hears a trumpet because there's a military base in the town. He hears a trumpet in the middle of the night, and he wakes up and he's like, "Am I all alone?" Basically. And I'm like, he doesn't say it's the rapture. And I was the only one in my class who's like, that's a rapture reference. Like, he thinks he doesn't get accepted by the rapture.
Yeah,
like,
of course. Yeah, this, but like I said, not exactly my favorite. I wonder in some cases why, I always find it interesting, not saying that they're not worth it, why some of these stories were chosen and then not others. But I also know that he wanted to add stories that had, like, I think he pretty much was like, if something in here has been reprinted a lot, then I want to make sure it counts. Which funny enough, there are probably major cyberpunk stories that he didn't put in this book that I haven't read that I should read, but he didn't put them in his book because they're in other books. So
like well, heck, you could put so much like Gibson in here, like Johnny Mnemonic, right, or something like that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'd like for someone who's read the story and for some reason somehow is actually watching Tim and I and is 38 minutes into here to tell me what the hell the point of that story is to make me like it more. So, because I'm sure there's something and I'm just not sure where it is. Anyways, let's get to the next one. Gene Wars by Paul J. Macaulay,
which was fun. Yes.
Nick Ollie. I'm not really sure. That's a little confusing there. It's not McCauley. It's McAuley.
Yeah, probably like, yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, I guess McAuley. Yeah, I guess McAuley.
I don't know, something.
I like it. I actually
our buddy Paul.
A friend of ours, Paul.
Yes, another author I haven't heard of actually. So, yeah, this one is this is essentially, it starts off with an easy bake oven, but it's actually growing your own animals.
Yes.
And it's genetic modification essentially, right? With these animals. Yeah. It's kind of like Jurassic Park almost, right? Because he's got like a little dinosaur, I think.
Yeah, they're like little dinosaur, little space, little dinosaur science little project things that like somehow creates like all of this sort of advancement in like genealogy that is ultimately picked up by the government for,
Yeah.
for a purpose.
Yeah, but this one has some interesting stuff. It's told in episodes.
Which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, some of them are longer than others. I think it makes the story flow pretty well. It's kind of an interesting one.
Following this main character from childhood to old age called, I think, is his name Evan?
I don't remember. Yeah, Evan. Okay. But it's got some interesting points, right? I mean, it's got this idea of like there's this record harvest, but a bunch of people are starving, right? I mean, or like there's one that's like countries don't matter, which is kind of a more typical cyberpunk thing. And right, or you can't let disease die out fully. Okay?
Right, because
it's bad
there's
for
no money in
business.
that. Yep. Like,
sounds like something. Anyways, but and
and like copywriting genomes and stuff like that. Yeah, it's very that's very I take cyberpunk in my
opinion. It seems in some ways it feels like if someone wrote this today, it wouldn't get published because it'd be like, hey, you're obviously a conspiracy theorist.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely don't think this will be published today. Yeah, at least people would. Yeah.
But no, I enjoyed this one. Again, not a favorite, but I did enjoy it. It's really easy to read, I thought. So, and it's got some fun stuff in it. What are you got any more thoughts on that? I guess.
Or yeah, it's one of those where it like really talks a lot about like cosmic like cosmetic changes. Like it becomes very popular to make your skin like completely blue. Is one of them, and to like grow like little small arms out of your body. I think I can't remember. But there's like a bunch of like different cosmetic changes that become very popular. And actually, that's actually a good point. He becomes like the odd sort of person out because he's like one of the people in society who wants to live, who doesn't change himself and who looks normal. But it's like his wife before he talks about like, you should have had like blue skin. And and it's so much about like genome and advancement that like I actually think it ends with like his wife becoming like a mermaid and like jumping into the sea and leaving.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You remember that?
I forgot about that. Yeah. Then that was funny. I mean, that's some weird poetics, right? Almost, right? It's like, okay, that's hilarious, but at the same time, it's like, what is it actually getting to here? Is that like I haven't read the whole thing. Wait a second. That reminds me. Let me look. But I just remembered something.
It kind of reminds me of that Tidar story we read last time, but not really. But it sort of had that like sort of quick like block pacing where it's like, it's in sections, and then it was actually kind of fun and kind of humorous.
Yeah. Okay. This is what this. My mind was blown, even though it's not technically connected. So the guy from that last story, his name is Guy Debord. Okay. This story reminded me some of the Society of Spectacle by Guy Debord.
Oh gosh! Of course.
That's why I was like, wait, this reminds me of Society of Spectacle. I was like, who wrote that? I was like, wait a second. There's no way it's Guy Debord. That's the name of the character in the last story. I haven't read the whole thing, actually. It's very Marxist for those who want to read it. Maybe that'll turn people on and it'll turn some people off. But it has some interesting ideas, right? And it's kind of this spectacle thing, right? Of like, okay, well, you didn't get your skin blue, so obviously you don't fit in here, right? So you got to stand out somehow, and in reality, he's standing out because he's just remaining himself, and it gets some criticism here, but it's commendable, I'd say.
He actually ages and stuff, and he's like an old man, and his wife is, is like very sort of attractive and sort of sexy, and she's a mermaid now, and she has skin, and she has gills.
I mean, that sounds kind of cool, but it also does sound like fantasy, right? And that's what a lot of this sci-fi stuff, when it gets into that, it's like, yeah, it's like that sounds cool, but like I don't know if I'd actually really be into that, like if that was actually possible.
Well, I mean, if you're the only one who doesn't have blue skin, Liam, don't be a square.
Oh yeah, you're just all the big blue meanies or whatever they're called in the Yellow Submarine or something.
Yeah, I would absolutely believe you.
Okay, thanks, Tim.
I would.
But no, it's an interesting one. The more we talked about it, I'm liking it more actually. So
I thought that was okay. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, but the next one is Britworld trademark,
which I really liked. I loved it.
Yeah, this one's funny, and it's by James Lovegrove. Again, another author I'm not familiar with.
Who I have heard of him before, but I've never read anything by him.
Okay. Yeah, this one's funny. Well, here, you talk about this one more.
This one is in some particular future where Britain itself is an amusement park. I get,
Yeah.
or particularly London or whatever is an amusement park, and you can you can pay to go to London, almost like you know how like if you go to like a place that's made to look like a 17th century village or something. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
you're going to visit Britain. And then they have like little sections, like, it's very funny because like it shows like how out of touch we are. Like it calls
Mhm.
like a Beatles song like folk music because it's like been so long. What else it mentions? It just sort of like really like it mentions like the like Cockney accent, like you can hear the outdated old Cockney accent, and this is where Sherlock Holmes lived, and that sort of thing. And I thought it was, yeah, I thought it was really cool. It's just like going on this weird tour where things don't seem quite right, and it's also sort of historical in the sense that like they will say things that aren't exactly correct as we know them, but this is how they might remember them.
Yeah, it's some things have gotten a little confused there, but it's
Yeah,
yeah, it's almost like it's like going to a 7th century, 17th century, any historical experience where there's people there acting like they are from a different time period, essentially, right?
yeah,
And what it's interesting, it's essentially what we would recognize as London, all right, or most of the world would recognize as London to a degree, at least, right? And globalization has claimed the world,
yeah.
right? It has won,
That
like
is the
extreme
point,
globalization,
right?
right?
And you're
So
selling that.
right, exactly, and so London is treated like a Renaissance fair almost, right? It's also kind of funny because like the colonizer has been colonized,
Yeah,
and they're a lot of people say they don't have any culture or not. Well, apparently they do because we made Brit World out of it.
yeah.
But and I think the colonizer here is America, essentially, like the whole world is America, essentially. And so
Yeah, and it
uh,
goes like there's a part where I was finding like where it talks about like I don't know how long ago it was. It's like we are standing outside of a pub, the Brit World TM equivalent of the bar. Pub in
mhm.
quotations. Pub is short for public house because you're like
Yes,
going
yeah.
on this little tour. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it mentions like they're like walking down the street, and it's like we walk down the street, fog swirls. Surely this is a place where all kinds of villainy and evil could be afoot. Basically implying like Jack the Ripper could be here. But
Yeah, right.
yeah, I thought it was fun.
No, yeah, it's a fun little, it's cheeky, right? Kind of in like a almost a British humor. I wonder if Lovegrove is American or if he's a
No.
Brit or what's going on there. But it's funny though when you say I have this. I forgot about the folk music thing. It's funny actually because in a way the Beatles is folk music, right? It's
Yeah.
popular music, right? You know what I mean? But it's kind of a cheeky thing where it's at this point it is folk music explicitly because the world isn't British anymore, I guess, or
Right.
something like that. And so, anyways, I had that thought because I remember I was reading a post once in that I don't article or something by Jason Ray Carney, who um, he called Robert E. Howard a folk artist. And I
Interesting.
was like, that's a very poignant like remark, to call an author a folk artist. I was like, and I guess you're not wrong
And what,
technically.
and like sort of in a nutshell, why would he argue that Robert E. Howard was a folk artist?
Well, because he's from Texas, I guess, and that he was
Oh,
writing
oh,
this response to his environment, and it's literature
ah,
from that place, right? And so I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I mean, then Drake is a folk artist for
okay.
Toronto, I guess.
Is right? That's true.
So,
That's true. So, but Lovecraft is not a folk artist.
uh, that's a good question. Yeah, right. I mean, so then that gets into the question of what is folk art, I guess, right? Um, I mean, I don't see why it couldn't. He could be very much Providence folk art,
That's true.
which we don't think about things like that, though,
We
right? Which is
don't. We,
why I was thinking when Carney said that, I was like, that's a really interesting way of looking at something because
yeah.
I don't think about stuff like that.
Get him
And
on the
so,
line. Get him on the air.
yeah, let
Ask
me
him.
just call up Jason. Um, so,
That's a good point, though. Actually, huh? Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, I guess if you would distinguish folk art from what, like global art,
I
you know what I
guess
mean? So it
so.
seems like a cheeky turn to call the Beatles folk art because they were popular music, right? I mean, like
Hmm.
everyone listened to the Beatles all over the world, right? So I
Hmm.
mean, like, yeah, and Robert E. Howard, no, know. Right, it's not like.
But I mean, but he could be a folk artist, and just because of like Texas and his roots and like what kind of person he was himself, and I don't know. I think that's an interesting argument.
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely call it. I wouldn't have no problem calling it like Americana or something, or folk art. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. It's an interesting way to put it. Makes sense, I guess. So Cross Plains, Texas folk art. Okay. Okay. That's an aside though. But do you have any other thoughts on Brit World or?
No, but please get your tickets for Brit World because it is. Yeah, remember they are not responsible or liable for any sort of problems or bruises.
Exactly.
Any harm that might come to you. That is not under the jurisdiction.
It's a worthwhile experience, though. You will not regret it. Bring the whole family. So, the next one is Ripped Images, I think. Ripped Images, Rusted Dreams by Gerardo Horatio. I don't know if that's how he says it. Horacio. I don't know. Porcayo, something like that.
Okay, and this one is apparently a classic, but it's been translated into English for the first time. This is the one where it's the old guy who used to be like an old hacker, or he used to be a hacker back in the day, or the early days of hacking, and sort of like the electric sleep and all that stuff he mentions. But like he's in a bar and sort of wasting away and old, trying to like relive his glory days with a bunch of sort of new quote unquote cyberpunks, because like he's talking to them about stuff that's theoretically considered legend. But he was there to witness a lot of these things happening, and him just like the new world phasing him by. Like they talk a lot about like, well, it was all about the brain then, old man. You can't do anything without mechanics now. It's all electricity and wires, stuff like that, which I thought was really interesting.
That is an interesting look at it, especially with like a stuck in the past type of thing, but just an aging people in general, right? You talk to an old person today and they'll tell you about, I don't know, the 1970s or something. I don't know. Right. No, it's an interesting one, and it's sold in first person, I think, right?
Yes. Yes, from his perspective, and it's also, like it's very voicey because it's the old man's particular tone.
It's like a bunch like chunks of big quotes, because lots of talking.
Yeah, because there's a point like he's talking about, like the old guy is talking about one of the newer guys is talking like he's like in a bar or something with like these punks or whatever, and like they're looking at the old guy and one of them says, "I'm going to actually write this down. Now diving into a computer is like running through the streets with the hounds after you and the paranoia of getting caught with the hot stuff. Now we defy God in every joint and every hallucination. You were never hunted by God." And I was like, okay.
Interesting. Huh. Yeah, this is an interesting one.
Yeah, it's definitely just one of those where, because I can see sort of the significance of it. Is this the one where he actually ends it? Yeah, in dedication to William Burroughs and William Gibson.
Yeah. Which I thought was a nice touch.
Yeah. So, because that was a sort of a very interesting one, I think. Just about sort of like I said, it's a bunch of sort of slice of life type things where it's this old man like seeing time pass him by and talking to these younger people about it, and like he lived through what they just consider legends and all that stuff.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. I think I could do with a reread on this one, to be honest. I think there's probably stuff that I could appreciate better on a second time. But yeah, no, it's cool to see it translated.
Yeah.
Here. So I wonder where it originally appeared. And I, you know what? Let's see.
I have obviously never heard of this
person. Okay. William Burroughs is a beat guy, beatnik. Hey.
Which makes sense, I guess, because it has like a sort of poetic vibe to it. But I can also be.
Yeah.
I've not read. I know who he is, but I've never read him as a purpose.
Yeah, but anyways, yeah, I guess we can get on to the next one though. I don't have much to say on that one. And then there's the Great Simoleon, Simoleon, I don't know, Simoleon Caper, by the one and only Neil Stephenson. So,
which I should read more Neil Stephenson. Have you read this one before?
I've not read this story. I did enjoy Snow Crash
Mhm.
by Stevenson. I have plans to read other things by him. So
Yeah, and this one was a bit funny as well, I think.
yeah, Stevenson's definitely got this vibe. Um, so it I think there's the metaverse in it, right? Which is also in Snow Crash. It's where hilariously, Facebook is metaverse thing.
That's right. And is that where did the metaverse come from? Snow Crash?
I'm pretty sure it did, yeah.
Okay.
Um,
The
but
term, rather.
yeah, and it has it's got new currency type of stuff, which is pretty common, I'd say, kind of common, right? Well, at least in Snow Crash, there's a hyperinflation or
Yeah,
whatever.
there's
So like
yeah, but it's definitely dealing with some sort of economy, and like I was thinking a lot about Bitcoin actually during this because they have like their
yes,
own
right.
currency they're trying to, and like they have this like big huge like internet virtual reality place where like there's a bunch of advertising and all that stuff.
Yeah, he's a. It's an interesting one because there's what are they trying to fill up like a football field or something?
Of coin, yeah. They're trying to guess
Yeah.
how many things are in a football. Yeah. You're right. And it's about that, and it's just about working for the system. And the guy, interesting, the main character is like a mathematician, so he can like look
Mm-hmm.
at something and tell how many jelly beans are in this glass or something, or vase or
Right.
something.
Yeah. That's stuff I don't want to do at all. But
No.
but yeah, it's interesting story because he lives in this city. He's got parents from Bismarck, North Dakota, which is not a big city. And I thought it was funny that I think they have what we would call like a calculator, right? And it's bad with big numbers, right? So
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I
yeah.
was like a virtual reality, like little cartoon calculator puppet thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
this
I don't
one was
know.
okay, but not my favorite.
Yeah, not my favorite. I like Stevenson's ideas. He's kind of quirky, right? But Snow Crash is better than this. So
I still
much
need to
longer
read
than this
Snow
though.
Crash. Yeah.
So uh Snow Crash is awesome. Just saying.
Yeah.
Anyways, I will it's just awesome. Anyways,
And then
so
Neuromancer.
it's very different than Neuromancer as far as enjoyment wise. I think it's better, entertainment wise. I think it's better than Neuromancer. Neuromancer has a bit more jargon essentially to it, and Neuromancer is also it's kind of funny, right? Because even though it's the cyberpunk novel,
Mm-hmm.
Case is, I don't know if have you read Neuromancer?
I have. Through
Okay,
Neuromancer, I
yeah,
have read. Not
right. So
because of
even
any
though
sort of, not because of any connection to Cyberpunk. I just know it's an important cyberpunk or
yeah,
science fiction.
right, but it's just funny, right? That Case basically starts working for the man almost immediately.
Yeah.
So I mean
Yeah.
so yeah, but Snow Crash it's interesting. There's working with, I don't know, the opening scene I think is so freaking awesome.
Okay.
And I'm just the whole book just can't like that might be one of the best scenes in the book, I'll admit,
Okay.
right? The opening scene. And it does drag a little longer than it needs to. But the opening scene is so freaking cool. It's so iconic. It's pizza delivery, but with a
Right.
Batmobile, and it's 30 minutes or it's free basically. And so you're just charging through freaking town, destroying crap.
Oh, that's all.
I've never had a
Yeah.
pizza delivered in anything but 23 minutes. And it's just oh my goodness. And he's got samurai swords.
Oh man, that's one of the greats that's one of the greats I've never read. Has that been reviewed on Liam's Lyceum?
It hasn't yet, no, actually. It will be soonish. So no, man, such a good book. Classic. Anyways, so yeah, I don't have much to say on that one though, and I guess we're an hour in. I think we're about halfway through too. So
I think so. We're getting there.
But yeah, and the next one is Immolation, which is one of my favorite words.
I like this one a lot.
Yeah, I don't know who Jeffrey Thomas is. Again, I don't know who these people
He
are.
apparently, I've heard him before because I've never read him before. He has his own universe called Punktown, which is a series of collections and novellas that take place in his own cyberpunk universe. And I know he's also done sort of some Lovecraftian cyberpunk stuff as well. And he has the first book is Punktown, which is a collection of stories that all take place in cyberpunk city or world called Punktown. Because
Oh,
I'd
cool.
heard of them before. But this was my first time reading Immolation, and I thought it was really cool. I thought it was really fun.
Yeah, this is the one where this guy's been emasculated, right? It's the Keeping Up with the Joneses, right? There's a bunch of people named Jones, and they're clones.
Yes, they're called cultures. They're all clones. Yes,
Yeah,
who are bred to do specific stuff.
yeah. So one of the Joneses escapes, right? And I think they're all clones from like criminals or something like that. Like,
Because like there's like a back and forth, and if you should be allowed to clone someone, but it's okay to clone criminals because that's how
right,
it goes.
right. And so then the idea that these clones aren't human, though,
Right.
and they basically live in this one place, but they escape from time to time, and they only live. They don't live very long. It's like 4 or 5 years or
Yeah, it was
something,
like
if I
something
remember
like that.
correctly.
Yeah, it was like a small amount of years.
But it's funny calling them cultures because it seems like they're grown like a cheese almost.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the world itself is interesting because it's like there's like on-demand snow for Christmas spirits, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and these cultures themselves, since they're clones, they tattoo themselves for like um, I don't know, to distinguish themselves.
Yeah, and they have like different jobs. Like there are some jobs. I think it mentions it. Like I think he's one of them. There are some clones that can stand heat more because they work near furnaces.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this was. I really liked. I really liked this one. I think I'm going to actually have to read that first Punktown book at some point. Not.
Oh yeah,
Not
yeah. I
now,
should write that down.
I liked it.
Yeah, I like this one too. It's this is the one where I think it's the one with the ending that it's like a double crossing thing, right?
Yes, because he's like hired to theoretically kill like a union boss because they're causing trouble. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was a double without spoiling, I guess. It was a double cross.
Yeah, it's funny. I really like this last scene, but I could see the betrayal coming from miles away.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Right. I mean, like, but it's still enjoyable. That's fine.
Yeah, it was
So
fun. Yeah, because I mentioned there's like another clone who's like one of the clones that didn't come out quite done, so to speak.
yeah.
Because it's like mutilated and it's kind of like hunched back and it lives outside. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
sort of. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting. I'm interested to know more about that world, but I think it'd be silly to begin reading another Cyberpunk book while we're in the midst of this. So I think I'll have to get back to that later.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. And the one comment I meant, I think that he kind of wanted revenge because he got an accident when he was still with the other cultures, I think, where he ended up getting emasculated. So he feels even less like a human than he already did.
Right. Like literally a mask. Yeah, actually, literally. Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah, of course. I'm sorry.
So, yeah. Anyways, the next one, though, the next story. Anyways, also immolation is just a great word, so I'm glad.
It is. It's a really cool word.
Yeah. This next one, I have no clue how to say this title of this story. It's by Cory Doctorow, who my buddy Raph Bluetack seems to like. It's the only thing I've read by this Cory person. But let's see. If I'm trying to remember what the hell this one was about. It's in California.
This is my fault. This is my fault, people, by the way. Yes. It is a guy who works for like a startup of some sort doing programming, and then his dead friend comes back. Do you remember?
Oh yeah. His name's Liam.
Oh yeah,
His friend's name was Liam.
Oh, that's right. All right, that's right. I forgot about that. See, I even got even more of Liam. He's such a cool guy.
Ah, yes. So cool.
Yes. Wasn't even a bit. Yeah, and so like, but I think I'm finding a trend to where like my favorite cyberpunk stories are not the ones that could actually be happening and close to reality. I think I tend to enjoy the like more wild, involved, speculative ones instead of the ones that are so close to home for some reason. But like this one, yeah, and yeah, basically like the guy finds a program created by the government that can be used to cure his HIV, his AIDS, actually, it's AIDS, or any illnesses. And so like they basically find out a way to like make their cells the peak form by stealing a government program and like using it to like calculate and sort of like heighten their body.
Right, yeah, because he comes back from the dead essentially, and he's like
Yeah,
beefy, right? And
he's
the
a
idea
hunk.
was, yeah, he started off when he worked at this job, he was a potato essentially, and then he gets really skinny and he's skeleton and he dies supposedly, and then he comes back as a hunk. So, yeah,
That's what I'm going towards. I'm going to die, and then next episode I will be a hunk. That's what I'm working on. But don't tell the government.
don't tell the government. Okay, I won't tell anyone. So, yeah, no, this is an interesting one. Did you enjoy this one, or how much did you
No,
enjoy this one?
I didn't care. I didn't
Yeah,
love it.
see, I didn't either, and I think it started out interesting. It didn't start out like super fast, but I thought it was interesting. Okay, his friend's dead. It's interesting. Um, and then when he finally meets Liam, right? Instead of talking about what the hell you were dead, they talk about their freaking job. I'm like,
Yeah,
really? You're gonna talk about desk work? Like
yeah,
that's what you're gonna do? Like it kind. I mean, of course they'll talk a little bit about like like what the hell's going on, but I mean,
yeah,
like really like
yeah.
like I
I
just kind
just
of like.
well, do you think
So,
it's maybe because like maybe that's who are people who are like sort of like STEM minded? That's how they. I mean, I don't know. That's a quantum leap, but I mean, you and I aren't those sort of people, I guess. I mean, yeah, but yeah, I would like to know what happened to you. But yeah, and it's
right.
about like and they run afoul of the government because they can now make them so. Like he like mentions it like he like is literally like curing prostitutes because like he's having like sex with like a bunch of like sex workers and curing them of their ailments because he has the tonic in him. The I mean I'm just
Yeah.
trying to he has the antidote as
Huh, sounds like some fantasy. Anyways, so yeah, I didn't really enjoy it that much though, and I wish I knew how the hell to say it. I don't know how to say it.
oh
Um,
well yeah something yeah I'm just gonna call it pwned. Do people still say it? I don't think they say
I don't think people say that anymore.
that. Was it like Onzord?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I don't.
Mm,
Omzord is probably how I would say it, unless he really wants those O's to be said a certain way. But,
no.
anyways, the next one is "Time of Day" by Nick Mamadis. I don't know. I follow this guy on Twitter now, actually, after reading this
Oh,
story. Um, so I liked this story.
I did too, and I am not surprised that you like this story. I don't know why, but I also feel like I know why. But I will let you tell me.
Okay, well, um, um, this one is interesting, right? And I think the start of it really sets the tone, but it also really helps the arc of the story go. It starts all over the place, right? There's the attention's everywhere of this character. Um, there's who's like a weird character. She doesn't seem to like sleep like at all,
Mhm.
or she's patched, she's jacked. She is I think helping like give a tour to like 13-year-old college sophomores, which is hilarious. And then but she slows down, right? I mean, like, she had like 11 jobs or something like that and worked 23.7 hours a day. So I mean, like,
Yeah,
I'm like, oh my goodness. So, um, but yeah, there's not a lot to it besides the fact that it goes from really crazy, right? It's all over the place. It's hectic. It's kind of anxiety inducing, to be honest, to like a return to nature almost. It more
yeah,
specifically, it feels more like a return to medievalism, to be
yeah,
completely honest. So,
yeah.
um,
Because it
yeah,
literally going to he literally goes to a monastery, right?
yeah, right. And there's like a happy ending via religious virus, I
Mm-hmm.
guess.
It was
So
very interesting. Yeah, I don't know why, but I figured that you would like that story just because of like the sort of maybe sort of the how it like transcends like the dichotomy of it. Like it's very fast and sort of like has like a sort of easy sort of like naturalist. I don't know. For some reason, I figured you'd like it. I don't know why. So like, is that why you sort of like it? Sort of like it goes into this sort of medieval way of sort of countering like sort of cyberpunk. Like she frees herself,
mhm.
obviously from sort of like it's like a nature versus sort of like systematic, very advanced society almost type thing. A different way of
Yeah,
thinking, I guess.
yeah. It seems rather romantic, and I like
Mm-hmm.
the romantics, and I like the medieval stuff too. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was interesting going from something that starts off you're very immersed in this very much cyberpunk world, and then it goes into like a weirdly unexpected way, and not in like a,
Yeah.
because I remember in part one there was that one story where it's like it's real life 3.0, right? And like that goes
Yeah.
in a weird unexpected way, but it's very much
Yeah.
cyberpunk. This slows down a little bit and is doesn't feel super cyberpunk by the end. I mean, it
No.
is, but I mean, it
Right.
has a
But
very different vibe from the start to the end.
it
So
does. I would be fascinated to know how he obviously the editor sure loves cyberpunk, but a lot this is fascinating to me how some of these are kind of like, yeah, this I would not consider a cyber I would, but it's very much a cyberpunk story. I thought that was really cool. Another example of something I wouldn't have gotten by just, only watching things that look like Ghost in the Shell, but Ghost in the Shell. So it's, different way of thinking about it.
no, yeah, I really like that one. So that might, as of the ones we've gone over so far, that might be my favorite. I did really like Axiomatic as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So
In other words, Liam likes the sort of very sort of cerebral, thought-provoking stories, and I like rats. So.
yeah.
No,
I
I
like
didn't.
that. Interesting.
No.
No, I guess I do. But no,
But I did really
yeah.
like that one actually.
No, yeah. It's good. It's good. I'm not, again, I started following Nick Mamatis or whatever his name is
Mm-hmm.
on Twitter. I haven't looked into anything else he's written yet, but I probably will.
Yeah, and that's what's so cool about anthologies, right? You find a story by someone and they could be awesome. So.
Right, exactly. The next story, branded by Lauren Bukes. I'm going to guess that's how that's said. Let's see. We were at Stones playing pool. Yeah, so playing pool at the start, right? Which cool. This one is funny actually because I think I told you about this one and I read it. Where she is like she's getting like these upgrades, but it's because she's sponsored by Sprite.
Oh yeah, that's right. This was very good.
This
I
is
forgot
like,
about that.
oh, I like it because it's like I sold my soul to the devil, but I didn't actually sell it to the devil. I sold it to a company.
Yeah, and then like her friends like her friends like you're a freaking sellout to Sprite. What the
Yeah.
hell? Like their friends are like, we do drugs and we have these advancements, so we would never do that. We're not a company. We're not going to do it to Sprite. And then actually, as a matter of fact, it actually mentions that she would be even cooler if she had been able to sell herself to Coca-Cola. Because they're even no, actually, I think this isn't like different brands specialize in different kind of
Right.
augments. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, it says she'd be sharper, wittier if she had sold a Coke instead, which is just hilarious. But also weird because Sprite and Coke is owned by the same people, which
Yeah,
is like interesting to me. Like,
not in the future.
I guess not. Interesting. But yeah, it's funny because she beats up this guy, I think, right? And in the end, she just sits down and she starts downing Sprite.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah,
And that's when it becomes obvious she sold her soul to Sprite because at first you're actually like, I don't really know what's going on. But I thought it was fun,
I
very
did too.
fun. Now, super memorable, maybe not. It's not like,
No.
I hate the term, but it's not like high literature, but it is funny and it's worthwhile. It's really short. So, I mean, like,
Yeah.
yeah, I like that one. It doesn't have the best name ever, branded. I mean, it's a good name for the story based off how the story works, but not a very memorable title for the story either.
No, not
So,
at all.
speaking of not a very memorable title, the next story is P.
Which I like this one, though I thought it might have been a little long.
Yeah. This one's actually originally from Korean. It's by Yoon Ko. I should have asked my brother-in-law how to say Korean names first, but this
He's
Koon. I don't
a
know.
Tim fan, from what I understand. So hello out there.
Yeah, it's the same brother-in-law. Right? So, but yeah, it's translated by this Shanlin Halbert guy, I guess. Yeah, this is this interesting one. It's this guy named Chang, I think, this is the main character. And his work life has invaded his home life. He swallows a capsule for an is it endoscope? Is that how you say that?
And yeah, it's an endoscopy or something. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. But it doesn't come out as planned. And so he gets paranoid and dehumanized and he gets like ostracized, which I don't know. It's interesting because it seems this seems very much East Asian to me. Right? Like it seems very much more when society is based more off of like it's more collective almost, like maybe
Yeah.
that's not the right word, but
But
kind of
no,
like
I get what you mean. Yeah, of course. Like P is the town and the
yeah,
company.
right. Right. And then, if this were to happen in America, people might think, okay, that guy's weird, but like, are you gonna feel like that ostracized by it? I don't know if you would
Yeah.
if this was an American character. So um it's kind of an unsettling story. It's a little
It
long,
is. It is.
but
I would almost call it also had some sort of horror like elements, maybe. Sort of psychological at least. For a
yeah.
second, it almost definitely reads like because I am a fan of weird fiction, particularly modern weird fiction as well. But it does sort of read like weird fiction. Well, I'll tell you one. We're gonna get to my favorite story is definitely weird, but it is peculiar because it does have that sort of weird fiction where you have this one individual who is experiencing something very weird and peculiar, and like all of his coworkers were able to pass this jellyfish, not jellyfish, this like pill that he swallows, but for some reason his won't. He
Hmm.
can't. It won't leave him.
Yeah.
And he has like this issue because like it just sort of ostracizes him, like you said, and he's just like, "This is weird, and I don't know why it won't pass." And so it's just this very odd situation of him dealing with this weird thing. He has no idea what it's for. He has no idea why some people can pass it and others can't pass it. And it's
Hmm.
sort of how society sort of like looks at him and sort of moves him outside of society because he did not take to this endoscope well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, he loses like some of his privileges of working at this tire company, and then it turns out other people didn't pass it either. They were just too scared to say something.
Yeah.
Right. So um yeah, it's an interesting one. It's not quite, it's like kind of like an inverted metamorphosis.
I was gonna
Right.
say it's got
So
that weird Kafka feel, doesn't it?
yeah,
Where like
yeah.
he's like in part of this like
It's
um
like, well, this is my life now, I guess.
yeah, this is what I
Kind of
do.
sucks, but
I have a
that's kind
picture of my
of
wife and family. Yeah, I was gonna say it had this weird like Kafka like thing.
yeah, and maybe that's what again, I don't know, was going for, but I don't know.
I'm gonna
So
say we're probably very. That's probably. I bet that there's some other towns there. And at the
right.
end, I don't know what happened at the end. I think he turns himself into a tire, or he becomes a tire. It was very, which is definitely weird. Do you remember that? He like goes out. He's like, shit. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, this is yeah.
I like this one.
It's an interesting one.
It is.
But the next one is the longest one. Unless you have more thoughts on P
Yes.
real quick. So
Let me talk about P all night.
okay.
I like P, but please go ahead. The next one is the longest one.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Well, so I Can Transform You. It's a novella as well by Maurice. Is it Broadus? Do you know?
I
Or is
think
it
it's Broadus. It must be Broadus. I would
I feel
assume.
like that's how an American would say it, but you never know. Some people are just like, I say my last name like how I want to say my last name. It's
Yeah,
Broadus. Thank you very much.
Broadus. Yeah, I think Broadus. I think of like a strong Roman. Like it sounds like a yeah.
Right. That's my buddy Broadus over there.
That's right. That's my buddy
There's thin
Broadus.
us over there.
Yeah,
So like,
right.
um,
Innocent
anyways,
Broadus.
this is a 2013 novella. It's like twice the length of the other novella in this section, though, by Delaney.
Yes. I don't know what the rules were, but clearly they don't matter because this is
Right.
big.
It's
But yeah.
it's a big one, man. And I was reading this and I'm like, I'm going to do a separate review on this
Are you?
because it's
Yeah, of
long.
course. Yes.
Yeah. So, it's in a lot of ways it's pretty straightforward. It's
Hmm.
almost the typical noir,
Yeah,
almost, except for there's this weird alien stuff going on.
which
Um,
I found that really interesting.
yeah, no, I enjoyed this one. It wasn't my favorite, but I did enjoy
No,
it. I didn't feel like it was any time wasted there. It's about a guy named Mac Peterson, if I remember correctly, which is my wife's maiden name, so I guess I'm related to Mac somehow.
which is a very sort of noir masculine dude name, isn't it?
Right.
Mac Peterson.
Yeah. Right, that's such a generic name, and there might be something there, the fact that his name is Mac, which means son, and then Peter's son, which also means son. So,
Oh,
or son of Peter at least. So, son of the Stones, by the way, rocks in the story. So, I mean,
okay, okay, all
a
right,
really
all
young rock.
right, okay, all right.
Um, something going on here. But is he's thrown through a window in the first sentence. So,
It did start cool.
yeah, it does a good Broadus, I guess, does a good job. I think. And then the culprit throwing him through the window is Jesse Duppy Honeycutt, which is a funny name again. That's a good villain name or a
It
good
is
yes.
Duppy.
um I think he's high on something. Um he's really well muscled though, at least. I mean, um but Mac has his job to do, of course, and so he can't, let that stand in the way. And uh, you know, I guess he doesn't want to shoot people because that causes too much paperwork. Um, um,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah,
Just,
but
yeah.
eventually, basically, the whole point of the story is that people have been getting tossed or something off these towers and splattering, and one of the victims is his ex-girlfriend, essentially, right? So
And now, did these towers come from? I might have gotten this confused with the rock structures. Like these, like alien. Did those come out of the ground? And like there's like a volcanic eruption, which there's some stuff going on in the background there. It's quite fascinating.
yeah, is this story is really weird because it has like this story that is like it kind of pertains to the world building, but the world building is mostly just happening in the background, and it's
Yeah,
just like, yeah, there's these weird alien things going on for some reason.
yeah.
And so like, and you find out more about that the closer to the end. In fact, the ending of the book, like I could call it a book. The ending of the book is interesting. It's not like super satisfying in a lot of ways.
No,
So
I didn't think so. And I don't want to delve into that. You'll probably delve into more. But yeah, and I thought it wasn't. But basically, it's. I don't think it really breaks any sort of new noir ground. But it's like a noir story about like an ex-cop who teams up with a cop who is like this augmented cyborg soldier whose
oh
name
yeah,
is Aid. I think it's ADE. I think it's or Ade or something like that. And like they're basically they're solving the mystery of one of the people who happen to have fallen from one of these towers. There's been a lot of potential theoretical suicides, of people jumping off these high towers. And one of the people who happened to fall off last time was like his girlfriend.
yeah,
They're
right.
they work to yeah, and there are twists
And
and turns like
she was an ex-cop.
yeah,
Or she was a cop, actually, a detective, and he's like an ex-cop, more of a private investigator now. He
right.
got kicked off the force. So, um, I don't know.
And he
This is an interesting one.
it was an interesting one, and like it talks about like how like society is like basically a cyberpunk society, because if I want to say it correctly, he got kicked off the force because like there are these like rich exclusive clubs who I think the story implies were like doing stuff with like children, like probably like engaging in like sort of like pedophilic acts, and so he was like, this is screwy and this is a
Lovely.
mess, and I think he was because he got too close and he was being too annoying. I think they had him removed. And
Mhm.
basically, the whole idea that like the stuff up top, they're gonna like have all this excessive stuff and do whatever they want. I think
Mhm.
the story really goes into that, and I'm just a cog in the wheel.
Yeah. Yeah, and you got this dynamic also with like these homeless people. Essentially, it's like a
Yeah,
commune.
the
Yeah.
Carmillion,
Yeah. And
which I thought was really interesting, actually.
yeah, and then you also have this dynamic that Mac has with the actual cop that's technically on the investigation. It comes up a few times, the race, right? Because I think Mac is white actually,
Yeah,
and
yeah, he's like a spook bot. So I assumed, yeah, I assumed that like he was because Mac is white, and obviously he had these different opinions of like of Ade. I don't know if it talks if does it mention if Ade is a Aid is if it does it mention if he's black or not? I know
I
he's
think it
obviously
does. I think it.
does it. Okay,
I can't remember exactly what it says, but
but he's definitely
I think he says something a couple times to Mac that's like implying like, "Are you racist or something?" I'm not
yeah
100% sure. So,
right. The allegory being like he's an other and people like look down
uh-huh.
on. Yeah. And we see it actually a lot in this section, actually, about like people who don't want to be augmented. You
Yeah,
know?
I feel you, people.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. But I
that's
thought that was interesting.
yeah. No, I like this one. I like this one a lot, and I think it's pretty easy to read.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's not like the greatest thing by any means that I've ever read, but it was enjoyable. I'd be interested to see what more that Broadus has written. So,
I think he's actually fairly successful, or quite successful, actually, as far as sort of
huh.
indies go. I've heard of.
Yeah.
This is my first time. Well, it's not a dig, but I was just saying in
Yeah,
general.
no,
I sorry, it did come off as a dig. I'd never heard of him before. I'd never read him before, but I'd heard of this. I'd never read him before, but I knew who he was. Like I'd never read anything, but I've heard of him.
Okay. Yeah. I remember you said you had heard of him because I
Mhm.
said this. There's this huge story in here. It's this by Maurice Broadus or whatever. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I've never heard the guy, but um. Wait, next one, I guess.
Yeah.
Be Seeing You by Madeline or Madeline Ashby.
Yeah. Okay.
Another person I
Yeah.
haven't heard
Yeah. Me
of.
neither. Yes. And this is actually a fairly simple one as well. I'm wondering how now that I think about it, how I'm adding these sections up. Where she basically works for a family and she's like a bodyguard. And like basically everything she does, they know what she's thinking, they know what she's doing at all times, and she's just a bodyguard who just is spied on constantly, just a part of the system. It's very straightforward.
Yeah. But in this case, I think she's Canadian, which
Okay.
maybe isn't that important. But her name's Hua, I think.
Mm-hmm.
HWA.
Yep.
And the story itself involves like a kid, I think. It's like a kid in school that she just goes to class with as like a bodyguard.
Yeah, yeah. She's like,
And
I think they're like a rich family who own whatever cyberpunk
yeah.
city they are in.
Yeah, and but some other girl gets involved. Well, she also seems to work or maybe had worked as like the bodyguard of like sex workers or
Mm-hmm.
something
I
like
think
that.
something like that.
Um,
Yeah.
and so when this one girl basically just gets in some trouble, she's
Yeah.
around to help out, right? I mean, like not let a bad situation become worse, which is cool. I mean, it's essentially toxic masculinity. I feel like is what this story is about,
Yeah.
right? And I guess kick-ass women, but
And another character who mentions that they do not have any augments, but the person who they work for
Mhm.
is augmented. Because they talk about, hey, you might need a break, or she's like, no, I don't need a freaking break. I'm fine.
Yeah, and it's it's cool because like it's about doing more than was required, right? This wasn't her job to protect that girl. She was doing it because she felt like she should, right? Which I thought was cool, right? I mean, like that's a nice lesson. You know what I mean? Like, well, one,
Yeah.
don't be a jackass. I guess there's a lot of people out there who are,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I mean, it's just interesting that she didn't have to do that. That wasn't her job, right? I mean, like, she took it like it was her job, though,
She
basically.
did.
So, um,
How do you
yeah,
feel about this story? Okay.
yeah, I enjoyed it. Yeah, I thought it was pretty easy to connect with, for whatever reason. Hua was pretty easy to connect with. So, um, yeah, wasn't like didn't blow me away, but I enjoyed it.
Same. Yeah, it didn't. Yeah, it didn't really blow me away, but I thought it was engaged. It's just another story. Yeah.
Let's be honest, most short stories don't blow me away. It's just really nice when they do. So,
Yeah, it
uh,
depends because I really, really like short stories.
yeah, same.
But yeah, I probably have been reading more of those than anything else late, but I slowly slide away from that. But I like a good short story. But I think I tend to read a lot of horror. But I think short story horror is like the best in short stories. I think so that might make me
Yeah.
read a lot, even though I don't read horror anymore.
Oh yeah, he doesn't really.
But I'm done.
Gonna be caught dead.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, I thought it was okay.
No, yeah, it definitely was. I thought the next one, I'm I need to confirm. Is this a Shadowrun story again?
If it's not, then the next one absolutely is, and the next one I loved it, and I might need to read a Shadowrun anthology
Oh my goodness.
because that was insane. Because that was literally, I think, like a sort of sword and sorcery or sort of like D&D novel, but they just had guns. I felt there was like a yeah.
I was not expecting it. Because like you get this idea, it's like, okay, so first off, it's called Keeping Up with Mr. Johnson, and it's by Stephen S. Long. Okay, we talked about a Shadowrun story in the last section. It was Better Than by Gene Robb, I think. This is about an executive, and he has to do something essentially, and he cheated on his wife. It gets weird when you realize he cheated on his wife with an elf. And that's elf as a bodyguard, and there's also
that's where I had to double take because there's
an
elf and a bodyguard.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, okay, is this Shadowrun again? Like, what is or is this just like a weird word choice for your world building or something? So, but then I'm pretty sure it's Shadowrun. So,
I am positive it's Shadowrun. I looked it up.
Right. I mean, there's spells too. I mean,
he does spells. Yeah.
The executive is
a wizard.
Yeah,
I loved it.
No, I thought it was cool. I liked it. That it was weird. I mean, like, it's funny because like some of that stuff I think I would enjoy more maybe if it wasn't Shadowrun, right? Like if it wasn't tied to this label, then I think it'd be cooler in some ways because then it would feel more like original. But
well, I wish that you would say that because you're the foremost.
Hey, I know.
Well, that seems a bit weird, right?
Yeah, I mean, okay, yes, I know, but I mean, Shadowrun is like a weird thing because it's like for whatever reason it was created as like a tabletop thing.
Yeah.
Right? When I read something like Forgotten Realms, I can just act like it's every other fantasy world, though, right? Like
I see.
So I mean, it's pretty passable. It's like, oh, Elminster's cool as hell because he's just a fantasy wizard, right? He's not a Dungeons and Dragons wizard, though he is. You know what I mean?
Well, excuse me, he's actually the Sage of Shadowdale. He's not just a regular wizard, so whatever.
Right.
But but of course, actually, you're exactly right. And I was wondering about that. And I have a question about that after you say something.
Oh, I was just gonna say that, it's interesting it's easier for me to distinguish that from the thing that's attached to. Okay, in Shadowrun, it's not because Shadowrun is very much Shadowrun, right? And so, while the story is cool, it's tied to Shadowrun, which doesn't necessarily make it any worse. It just makes it that maybe this Stephen S. Long he got here, but he was given this automatically rather than getting here by himself, which really, again, it doesn't matter, but it just, I don't know.
Okay, but what if I see what you mean. That actually makes a good point because so you're saying if you're reading Forgotten Realms, which everyone knows, Liam is a sort of foremost scholar of one other particular thing, but also Forgotten Realms as well. You don't think of it as like its own thing. You think of it as like any fantasy world.
I mean, yeah, it's one I'm very familiar with, and it's one I know that a lot of people write in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's also one I know will be really different. Now, maybe my opinion, and I actually could almost guarantee my opinion would probably change on Shadowrun here if I just read more Shadowrun.
Yeah, right? Who's got that?
So I mean, because I read Forgotten Realms and I'm like, oh yeah, Salvatore, he sucks. But Kemp over here, he's awesome, and it's the same world, So yeah. So, but I don't know. Yeah, I'm probably being. That's not any conscious thing for me. That's
I think that's perfectly fine and hilarious. I just thought that was funny because I thought the Cleric Quintet was pretty cool, but you hate everything. And I'm a huge Salvatore fan.
I don't hate everything.
But that's the question I was going to ask you. Actually, I should have asked you when we were back on the other question. I know we're running out of time, but when I think I can't transform you, and I think of something like this story, and you are a prolific writer yourself. When it comes to stories, I guess more so sort of speculative fiction, which is you're into, is world building important to you? Like if you're writing something, are you reading something, are you really super involved in world building? Because I guess Sword and Sorcery doesn't really have to have
that. I guess it depends on what you mean by super involved. Because if I'm sitting there. Well, what a lot of people have when they want to go write fantasy, I have a problem with being straightforward in answers sometimes. Anyways, but they're like, okay, I have to world build And so instead of, oh, hey, I'm coming up to this author at this convention, I'm going to tell you about my world. And the author's going to be like, tell me about your story. And you're like, I haven't read anything because I haven't word built enough. I was like, okay, well, you're doing it wrong, right? And they'll be nice about it, unless they're a jerk, right? But most authors I've talked to are pretty nice. And but that's a fair point. You know what I mean? So like, world building is important, but at the same time, like when you're writing, especially when you're writing something like Sword and Sorcery and you're writing a short story, you don't have time for it. You want it to be there, right? But like you don't want to spend time on it so much, right? Like you want it to come up, but not to distract. You don't want to be like, oh, look, my awesome world building, right? Or as Brandon said, look at my iceberg. You know, like
yeah, of course. Or look at this very
peek of it.
involved. Yeah, because like obviously that's more of a product of like sort of like high fantasy or sort of like epic Brandon Sandersonian fantasy, where you know he's like, you know, mountains of sort of like, you know, magic systems and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and he kind of has to a degree. He has to more because he's got to like, I got to make something very intricate happen here over very thick and lots of volumes. While Sword and Sorcery is like, you're going to read this one story. It might be connected to others, but you may never read them. So it has to work.
And do you prefer that?
I prefer that, yes.
That's what I was thinking.
I like the intricate world building stuff. I think that can be fun from time to time.
Okay.
But then I've gotten kind of to the point where I'm just like, if I'm sitting here thinking for whatever amount of time about how cool the Stormlight Archives is, I cannot talk to anyone about that. Okay, unless someone else has read Stormlight Archives. I'm just going to come off as a weirdo. Okay, but I'm just like, this cool short story over here, it's Eldritch. This guy managed to weird me out, and it's dope as hell, right? This guy's like Gene Wolfe levels of awesomeness, or like Clark Ashton Smith. You should check him out, right? You know what I mean? Like that's something, you know what I mean? Because you get this like nice hints, even if it's something like just a weird freaking word. You know what I mean? Like if it's Clark Ashton Smith, it's like, oh wow, that guy just used like this weird freaking word I've never heard of, never will hear again. And like it's just like, and but I mean, like just nice, like it just happens. It's just stuff that happens. It came up into the story, so it happens. There it is. It's not coming up again. Or even stuff like epic fantasy has a tendency to explain everything. Right. Eventually, it might not do it right away. Right. Good epic fantasy won't do it right away. It'll give you hints, and then eventually will explain it. But at the end of the epic fantasy, you're like, wow, that was really cool and rewarding. But then on the reread, it's worthless.
Right. Yeah. You've already had the info. That's actually a very smart thing to say that I hadn't actually considered before. Yeah, I think that's right. Because I find myself always sort of interested in world building, but I don't know if I'd heard you exclusive. I don't think I'd really heard you sort of talk about it in detail. But I was wondering what you would think about that, since you were so involved and such a fan of Sword and Sorcery, where you're not really going to do that or be expected to do that to that level by any means.
Yeah, I mean, I want it to be there, but I don't want it to detract from anything. I want the story to be entertaining first and foremost. If it's going to entertain you, and if you're going to notice, that's cool as hell, right? Like that story I was telling you about that's in that Half Human Heroes anthology, right? Like I put lots of references in there to things, and they're all subtle as hell. I mean, even the tiniest thing, the old lady's name is Mabel. I named her after Mabel Tolkien, right? I mean, and then, or like there's several places mentioned, for example, that are like, it's Zulthal from Robert E. Howard, Zulthal the Dust, right? But I spelled it slightly different because I don't want to get sued. Or Imrir from Elric of Melnibone, but again, I spelled it differently because I don't want to get sued. Or there's Autumno, which is like Autumno. It's actually Autumno is an older spelling of Autumno, so it kind of works. From Tolkien's Legendarium, you know, the first fortress of Morgoth. There's Octarumu, which is just straight up the reference, which is a city in the later Sun Eater books. That's like a very Lovecraftian like place. That's just how it's spelled. I asked Christopher, I was like, can I put this in my story? He's like, yeah. And I was like, cool. Now my fiction's Sun Eater fiction, technically.
Liam's a big deal, you know. He's that's really cool. There's like a Lovecraftian city in Sun Eater somewhere?
Yeah, but it's like in book 4, and I shouldn't spoil it. So, but
I will be starting book 4 tonight.
Oh, really?
No.
What? No, I was like, what the hell? You tricked me, Tim.
I have to start the first one. I'll get there. I have a lot to do.
No, the series has gothic elements. It's got like kind of like Caesar stuff. If you
I know it's very sort of Roman, or at least
yeah, and it's more Byzantine in a lot of ways, but
that makes sense. Backstabby.
Yeah, but then also like there's like decent amount of gothic stuff, especially in that second novel, and Lovecraftian stuff, especially in that second novel, and it gets a little bit more of that the further you go in. And there's cyberpunk stuff as well, especially in the second novel too. So I mean, like it's just a cool series. It's got a lot of cool stuff in it. So
I have so much to read.
you do.
But yeah, I was just curious about the world building question myself. I took us completely off. But yeah, I thought keeping up with Mr. Johnson was really cool. It's pretty much like classic, dungeon dive with D&D characters,
No,
but
yeah,
they're going into like the swamps. Because I forget that Shadowrun technically takes place in our world, but the awakening happened or something. I don't know exactly what that
yeah,
means. But like the world changed, alligators are huge and people have magical powers
right,
and stuff.
yeah, yeah.
And so yeah,
And this one was in the Everglades too, right? So it wasn't in
yeah,
Seattle, which is the normal location for
yeah.
Shadowrun. So
They went to Florida to take something from another company.
yeah, I did enjoy this one, and honestly, I could see myself playing through something like this too. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed it. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
We'll be back for the Shadowrun segment. Maybe there'll be a Shadowrun story in every section.
there might. Yeah, we
If
will
there
see.
if there
So,
isn't, yeah, because we have a final review to give
yes, right. Yeah, there's a Fritz Leiber story in the next session, so
out. Oh,
that's
is
probably
there?
automatically the best section.
All right,
Um,
that's going to be the only story we talk about next time, I'm assuming.
yes. No, so, no, we should get to the next one now. That's a Flyover Country by Tim Mon, I assume is how they say that. Um, uh, so this one is a little confusing to start, if I'm remembering correctly. I didn't really know what it was getting at, right? Because this is about a prison, kind of, but there's a factory. It's a factory, but part of the factory is worked on. Prison people work there, inmates, prison people, inmates work at part of the factory, and then volunteers. It sounded like, or you could volunteer.
I
Maybe
think
they're just normal workers.
I think they're normal workers. Like you can
Okay,
get like you're either forced to do here or you theoretically can pick up a couple shifts, or maybe also volunteers or something like that.
yeah,
This one
it
was
probably
probably
isn't volunteers. That'd be weird, but
yeah. This is
um,
probably definitely in the modern world.
yeah, this one is interesting because you just don't know what's going on. So I mean, like the whole point I feel like is the reveal of they're doing something illegal. Is it for a good reason? It is for a good reason.
Yeah,
It's rather touching.
actually,
So
surprisingly, how dare you put something touching in my bleak, gritty cyber augments? But yeah, that was actually quite touching.
yeah, no, I like this one. And it's really short. I mean, so it's nice because when you don't know what's going on, I don't like it sometimes when they're just like they lead you on forever, right? And then they're like, "Oh, I'm going to try this big reveal." And they have this reveal, right? It's daddy, right? Um, but it's not long. It doesn't take super long to get there. So,
Yeah, that one was pretty self-explanatory. I thought that was actually a pretty good one. That one's definitely, I suppose, very sort of prescient for today because like iPhones and stuff, and
yeah.
they work at the phone factory.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then people are imprisoned working on phones. So yeah,
Doesn't sound like a fun time. It
no, no,
doesn't hey, anyways, next story unless you have more to say.
no, that was very straightforward.
Yeah. Okay, so Dark Outs.
But good, like you said, told well. I'm sorry.
No, yeah, yeah, I like that one. I don't know anything about Tim Mon. I don't wonder if he does like short story stuff mostly or um but then Dark Out by E. Lily Yu. Oh, this one's a little weird. That's right. There's like this is one of those that has this kind of is like okay ending anyways as well, but like
Yeah,
essentially everything's live streamed. That's everything. Everyone has a camera around them at some point, so you can go to essentially Twitch.tv and look up Tim Bloom. I want to look at what Tim Bloom is doing right now. So
he's
it's a
right.
little weird because it can get kind of stocky, right? You know what I mean? But this guy uses it to Facebook stalk essentially his ex-girlfriend,
Yeah,
right? So
and I know people hate when you make this sort of analogy, but definitely very of all of this was very. I can see this being an episode of Black Mirror, like very sort of Black Mirror vibes. I think because like the horror, or not the horror, that'd be horror, but like the sort of the issue is specifically technology, and people can watch each other at any time, and you can pull up people, and like if you're rich enough, you can like have like down dark time for like 30
yeah,
minutes or something.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because it is past. It's kind of past. It's something that's very dystopian. It's passed off as very nonchalant, right?
Yeah, that's
It's
perfect.
kind
Yeah.
of maybe it's commentary on like Google and the government spy on you, and it's just everyone's like, okay, I don't care. I want my iPhone.
Yeah.
Or something like that. So I mean, like, I don't know. The ending comes very quickly, where there's just a little dark out, hence the name of the story, and then
Mhm.
they're just like, oh, what do we do now? Well, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting look. If not the last thing I said, it's at least a look at like being terminally online. I feel like,
Yeah.
which is a problem we have. At least
At
a
the
lot of
least
people have.
terminally, yeah,
So,
terminally tapped in, so to speak.
right.
That's all he did all day, every day.
hmm Poor guy. Poor Brandon. Anyways, that's his name, I think. Brandon. Yeah.
I
Okay.
think it is actually.
uh, but we're getting down to the last four. I
Yeah,
think the next one's really short because it's a manga.
it is a manga.
And I'd be curious to see if this was probably in like some magazine. Because it's so short, there's no way they can, publish this
Yeah,
by itself. But it's by Ryoko Azuma, 2045 dystopia from 2018, translated by Marissa Steels from Japanese, of course. I was not expecting this. It
not
was a
at
nice
all.
surprise, though. That's why I put Kusanagi on the background there, actually, because I was like, oh, that's
Oh, right,
Kusanagi.
right. Of
So
course, of course. Did you like this one?
I did, yeah. It was like it turned dark so stinking quick. I mean, like it was dark from the beginning, right? But I mean, like it's just kind of again passed off as nonchalantly. It's like,
I liked how it sort of looked like the big cats. That was kind of adorable.
yeah, right. Um, and then it says like, yeah, stop the huge cat, and then no one bothers with romance anymore. Um, girls don't have to deal with menstruation.
That's right.
Um, and men are freed from the pitfall practice of masturbation. Um, women don't have to give birth, of course, anymore. You place an order for a baby, right?
Hmm.
Basically, and you can design it on your phone.
Right,
Um,
right. Intelligence, all you want. Stats wise, whatever you need.
yeah, and then it very much gets into he works on like a cow farm, and the cows are treated very inhumanely, and they're they're treated as meat essentially, right? And then he's like, "I'm meat." Like basically that's how it ends. Like
Yeah.
and so I mean he gets really pissed off and the robots that psychopath robots almost like come and they're like, hey. So
Yeah, they're like, "What's good?" Yeah, he like flips out because like it's the same narrator who was just sort of like nonchalantly or casually talking about the society, who you find out all of a sudden it's like I don't want to say losing his mind. He's definitely sort of like not thrilled with this
mhm.
society this dystopia he's describing in 2045.
Yeah, it's the last thing he says is who made this future? And then before that it's like rage, meat which triggers intense sorrow, and meat that's had its pain and emotions removed by machines. So essentially, it's like, oh, cool, you don't suffer from menstruation anymore. You don't have to be pregnant. You don't masturbate at all. So, which is to say, you're never horny, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're no longer human, right? I mean, so,
Yeah,
which is interesting, right? Because those would seem like problems that most people
right.
like very gladly give up, right? But I guess not. I don't know. So, I mean, he's got a point, right? And so,
Yeah,
like,
he does have a point. I think. Yeah, that was a very interesting one. It was interesting to see that in there.
yeah, and the style of the manga I think worked pretty well. It's pretty gruesome seeing that
It
cow at the
is.
end,
Yeah.
and yeah, and generally manga doesn't work too well on me. So, um,
I see
I like it.
Berserk behind you.
Wait, what?
I
Oh, you
see
see
Berserk
Berserk?
behind
Yeah, I
you.
haven't actually read through this. I read a lot of manga when I was younger, like Trigun and stuff, because I'm cool.
Ah, you
Um,
are. You are.
yeah, so
Space Western, you are.
yeah, and then I was like, I've had Berserk recommended me several times, so I was like, I should
Uh,
get that, and then it'd probably take me no time at all to read through that whole thing. But I mean, like,
You've got two. You've got Solomon Kane to read.
oof, yeah,
Yes, you've
it's
got
too much.
King Cole.
Yeah, well, I read the Cole
That's
stories
true.
by
You probably
Howard
already read
actually.
all the Cole.
I haven't read the Kane or the Brand McMorn. Um, I was actually reading Red Nails today. I was reading in this,
Oh,
but because it
is
has red
that
nails.
new?
This is the latest pastiche novel, came out last year, but it's a
Oh,
prequel to Red Nails, which is the last Conan story, last not chronological because he's not a king, but last one he ever wrote. Um, so
and so what's going on with Conan right now? They're doing more pastiches
but they're short
with
stories.
so
He
they're
says
short
right now.
stories with like
Mhm.
obviously significant writers of today. That's what's
Yeah, there's
going
like
on.
Stephen Graham Jones,
I think
John C. Hawking.
I think John Langan's writing on who I
Yeah,
know from the Weird World.
which is funny because hey, if I were to look at those authors, I would go for the less popular ones probably. John C.
Yeah.
Hawking is a great sword and sorcery writer, and
Mhm.
Scott Odin is supposed to be doing one. I don't know if he's going to do Conan exactly, but he's going to do one of the Howard characters. Odin is amazing at Howard's voice. Like I kid you, I'm reading an Odin novel right now. I really
Really?
like Odin,
Okay. Okay.
and Scott's a really nice guy. But so
Who is the name of the guy who has written the Bane series that you
oh, that's
really
Howard
liked?
Andrew Jones,
Okay.
and
I
Howard's
have the
really
first
awesome
one. I
too.
haven't read it either. Okay.
So
Yeah, you would think
yeah.
they might ask someone like him or something who is experiencing
Yeah,
Bane.
I wonder if they I'd imagine he would say yes if they asked him. Maybe not. Maybe he's too busy, writing other things. But um,
I just happen to know you would know about that.
Howard's a scholar, so
Yeah.
uh,
I figured that would be something you would know about, but I know I saw that like they're putting out like short stories or
yeah,
like novellas or something that are like by
right.
noted names that are
Yeah, I
coming
haven't
out.
actually read any of them yet, but I imagine the Hawking one of the ones that are out right now is probably the best. If I
Okay.
were just gonna say,
Is that
like,
a these are new Conan pastiches?
yeah, they're new.
Pastiches?
I think the Hawking one might actually be I think his might actually, interestingly enough, have been a story he wrote that was turned into a comic,
Okay.
and so it's all in one place, and it's a short story rather than comic bookified. So
Yeah, I was confused. Why wouldn't they just release? Is this an anthology or a collection,
they're
or are
just a
they
bunch
just?
of short stories. They're like I don't know, $1 a pop, maybe. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
I find that a little weird, but I guess that's how it goes. Okay.
yeah, it
Okay,
might
that's cool.
be anthologized
Yeah, I'm
later.
sure.
I'm not
Of
sure.
course, of course. That makes sense. That makes
I
sense.
would hope
Yeah.
so. So, anyways, we're getting to the end here, guys. Don't you
Yes.
worry.
I apologize. I've settled in comfortably now, so I keep randomly getting sorry.
It's okay. This goes in my chatting playlist, which is where I put stuff that are long conversations. This
Yeah.
one is pretty focused on Cyberpunk, but we can have a side. That's cool.
I apologize.
Um,
I'll never bring up anything else that's on Cyberpunk.
okay, Tim. Tim will be quiet from now on. No, Tim will be quiet. So he is not tempted to bring anything else. No. Thoughts and Prayers by Ken Liu is the next one. This is a very interesting one because it kind of reminded me of Helicopter Story. It's like you're like, which side are
Yeah.
you shooting from here, right? Like, because it seems critical of a lot of things, right? I
Yeah.
mean, like it's got that very typical snarky title, Thoughts and Prayers, right? Where like I don't need your thoughts and prayers,
Right.
like I need you to actually care about yada 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 whatever. Right? And so this is gun violence, though, right? This is
Yeah.
it's a shooting. Is the sister dies? It's actually like little entries from the whole family. There's Emily, I think, is the sister. Um, Greg is the dad, and Abigail's the mom. The sister that's died is Haley.
Yes, and then Sarah Fort is the odd two is Greg's wife
Yeah,
or
yeah, there's
Greg's
the aunt. Yeah.
sister. Yeah, yeah,
And so it's a really interesting one because it gets like I don't know so they don't. It's not just she just dies, right? They try to. It's basically we don't want gun violence, and so we're gonna make someone a martyr here. We're gonna
right.
venerate someone. Essentially, is what's going on. And so they take these
Yes.
photos and they make this 3D experience out of this dead girl, right? Um, but this exposes her to. What's funny actually is that they say it exposes them to like gun uh people who like guns and like the Second Amendment, even the ones that are like unapologetic, don't touch the Second Amendment at all.
Hmm.
But more exposure just to internet trolls,
Yeah, it's all
that'll
about
just
the
hate you
trolls,
for
right?
no
Yeah.
reason. So I mean, like, right? They get hated like well because then they turn this. If you can turn these pictures and photos into a experience that's supposed to be touching, you can also turn it into porn, right?
Yeah.
And other messed up things, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, this is
What's
an interesting one.
yeah, it was a very interesting one, and like it talks about like because you get the perspective of one of these trolls later on as well. A troll perspective comes in, and like you actually see why like what situations happened to where like the family really starts to get annoyed by the mom and even sort of begin to hate her. But then the trolls are like, she herself was a troll because she was trying to sort of like essentially armor herself so that she could say whatever. Like, there's this line here that I thought was really interesting where it tells like they say it's like everyone is a troll now, and he mentions different reasons why. If you've ever done anything like
Yeah.
this, you're a troll.
He
Yeah, like,
says, yeah, everyone
yeah,
is a troll
yeah.
now. If you've ever liked or shared a meme that wished violence on someone you'd never met, if you ever decided it was okay to snarl and snark with venom because the target was powerful, if you've ever tried to signal your virtue by piling on an outrage mob, if you've ever wrung your hands and expressed concern that perhaps the money raised for some victim should have gone to some other less privileged victim, then I hate to break it to you, you've also been trolling.
Yeah, which is saying something, I think.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. It's like this Lou here gets really well into like all these people's heads, and it's just like, wow, I don't actually know what you're trying to say,
Yeah,
but
and
it's
this
like
and
it's
believe it,
thought
this is
provoking.
yeah, and this is
So
actually my first Ken Lu story. Surprisingly, I've never read him before.
yeah, same. I think I don't know. Yeah, there's um I don't know. Yeah, there's
He's got
another
a
Lou that tells is in the last story actually, Arthur Lou, which I thought was funny. That there's two Lou stories, but different Lou's. So.
in this collection.
The very last story in this section is the life cycle of a cyberbug by Arthur Lou.
Right. I will save my thoughts on that.
I feel like you like that one, but anyways,
You don't know. I could have hated it.
you could have hated it, but I really like Thoughts and Prayers though, because like
I did
it
too.
comes off with all this emotion, and that's the good thing actually that I feel like Ken does here. Sometimes, a lot of times, when you get into literature, a lot of times you'll get political or heated opinions, whether they're political or not. It's generally
Mhm.
opinions that have been politicized, um, and you have a tendency to hate the other side, and he does a really good job of giving you it all. And so it's just like, and it's easier to not hate people, even if they're darn whatever, because they're human. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you even kind of agree with the snarky ass of that troll. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just like, okay, well, I
Yeah.
mean, so
It's very good showing both sides, and it's and like you said, the story is told by, I don't know, I guess interviews from each member of this family, I guess, and it goes back and forth.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's actually, I think it's really well done. I've not, like I said, I've not read any Ken Lu before. I don't think, obviously, I knew who he is. This is the
Mhm.
first time I actually read a Ken Lu story. And
Yeah.
I really like it. It's in a lot, obviously.
Yeah. And then I did like the kind of the it's my last thought on it, but the what is the words? Wow, the kind of the symbolism of they have armor. They call it armor, but it protects them from like internet
Right,
trolls essentially. And it's not against bullets, right? So it's kind of like they wear armor. Haley was not wearing armor and she died. Right.
right,
It,
right.
you didn't have to walk
Yeah,
around with armor, but I
right.
mean,
Yeah, it's this armor that sort of like blinds them from trollish acts on the internet, like
yeah,
kind of like firewalls, yeah,
right,
type
yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
essentially.
And you're right, absolutely, yeah, yeah. This one's good.
Yeah, I like that one. Hey, the before last one, which I'm not a huge fan of the title, uh, and I feel like based off the pen name here, that's a pen name, right?
It
There's
must
no
be.
way that
It
that's the
must
actual
be.
person's name.
It must be.
So, right, because the name was Minister Faust, which is like, okay, this is the Minister of Satan,
Yeah. What's going
like
on here?
versus Faust. What's going on here?
Yeah.
But somatosensory cortex dog mess, you big, you mess. Oh my goodness, somatosensory cortex dog mess you up big time. You sick sack of bleeped out, but you
Good
know.
job, William. You handled it.
So, um, this is a weird story.
I'll say it's very weird.
I mean, I like parts of it, and I like weird stories. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. No, I know.
And but it's just like it's just so random at times. I'm just like, this guy gets a virus essentially that makes him like a dog, right? That's like, and so he barks, and he's like, at first he's like, "Where the hell is that barking?" And he's like, "Oh wait, it's me," And so he's like, "I got a problem."
It's so
Um,
weird. It's so weird.
yeah, it makes you wonder like who's writing these things. I like my weird stuff, right? But I
Yeah.
worry for people sometimes. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. He's like a billionaire, you know, type guy. I can't,
Yeah.
who's just doing whatever he wants, and he's whatever he's doing to break the law, like a sort of a Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk esque type figure, who is doing whatever he wants, breaking all sorts of laws,
Right.
gets punished by these people who like hack into his
Right.
brain,
Yeah.
really.
He's got a very snarky style, which is pretty common in Cyberpunk,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. And, um, but I mean, there's like references to Reddit. I mean,
Yeah,
so like if you don't already have an idea what the story is, then that should help you. But so it's just like,
pretty
um,
much.
but I mean, it's interesting take, I guess, on like consciousness. But I don't have much to say on it. It wasn't my favorite.
No,
Um,
no, I thought it was okay. Definitely not my favorite. That was interesting, and I like weird stuff, but that one was just odd. That one was like
yeah.
bizarre. But
Well,
I like.
I like weird stuff, but when it feels like weird to a point of like, wow, this is just cool and fun. But when it feels like deranged, like
Yeah, I'm
you
not a
might
fan
need to
of
get some
that.
help, person. Like,
Yes,
I mean, that
yes,
it felt a little bit more deranged to me.
yeah, yeah,
So
or
this
like
last one is
bizarre.
more in the type of weird camp I like. The
Yes,
very last story, so
this last one is the best
unexpected.
story in the entire section. I loved
Aha!
it. Of
Gosh
course,
dang! Ah, I would
I
not have
loved.
guessed. No, I would not.
I loved it. I
Yeah.
loved it.
No, yeah, this is an interesting one. It was confusing at first because I was like,
Yeah, of
"What?"
course.
It's actually about the cyber bar. Okay, like that is the entity, and it's not what you're thinking. It's an entity that, I mean, it's a cyber bar, but disguises itself as a cyber bar so it can get patrons and make it its victims.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing that's going on.
I wish I'd have written this because I thought this was great. I thought this was brilliant. But I'm also weird. Who would have thunk? But I thought that I really liked it.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's like it's a bar as an organism, right? I
Yeah.
mean, which I don't go to bars ever. Maybe there's
No,
something there
neither
where
do
people who
I.
go to bars that would understand. But I mean, that makes me think is like, what kind of society would you freaking need that would be your organ? I mean, like that. It's almost in some ways it's not super unique, right? It's basically a mimic, right? I
Yeah.
mean, but I mean, it's still weird, right? So like,
Yeah, and like all the things inside, well, besides guests, are like part of the bar's organism. Like it mentioned, like I knew I was this was me when like one chapter was like the drink from the perspective of the
yeah,
actual glass of
right,
whiskey or
yeah.
something. It was like here we go.
Yeah, that was near the beginning, yeah, and I was just like, "What is going on?" I was like, "Is this about a barkeep?" I was like, "No, it's not." And yeah,
That's a
there's some weird things in it. The messed up thing is the candy house thing. I
that
mean,
was that was that was cool. That was very yeah. That
yeah,
was
I mean,
very odd.
it's clever. I mean, because I mean, in reality, it's just a twist on, the Hansel and Gretel, right? I mean, so like, but it's messed up, right? I mean, like it's right.
That was, yeah.
So,
So
um,
basically, yeah, the house, like the bar, the organism has like different things it wants to do with its life, but it wants to like be did it say ingested by a human? It wants to be something, or it wants to
yeah.
breathe. I can't
It
remember.
wants to reproduce, right? It's a living organism, right? It wants to reproduce, and so it's like it's got this funny like last of a dying breed type of thing, right? So like, um, yeah. So it changes its appearance when it's in one area, yeah, to eat children. And so if that makes you sensitive, then don't read that
Yeah,
part.
if
So
this did not receive a nebula, then
it did not receive a nebula.
it better have. But I
It
don't know how
oh
that
okay.
I don't know how that works. I don't know if you can do get a nebula if you're they probably have like a foreign language. I have no idea
I
actually.
don't know how it works.
Because
Yeah.
actually this is translated from Chinese.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot to write
I
that
just
down.
realized that.
Nathan
I'll have to
Nathan
look him up.
Fairies. I don't know. That's a weird last name, Fairies.
It is. It
Uh,
is. I will have to look that up because this might be the most important author of our time right now. So.
Of
But I
course,
actually,
let's say that after having enjoyed it.
but yeah, it's a tour de force.
We should definitely. He should have that on his next book. The most important author of our time, Tim Bloom.
A blurb by me.
Yeah. I
Tim
blurbed the
Bloom.
book actually.
Have
Funnily
you? What
enough.
did you blurb?
It was a self-published book called Gurzel. Or
Urzel.
yeah, it's pretty. I like it. I like the book. Yeah,
Is it
it's
fantasy?
yeah, it's historical fantasy. It's actually kind of cool because it blends it's there's two parts to it, and there's like a King Arthur part up in Britain,
Oh,
like post-Roman, and so you have like Beowulf stuff coming in, because the author doesn't ignore that. And then you also have Northern Africa, so you have the
oh,
Amazigh,
cool.
so like Moors, right? I guess is the more
Mhm.
common name. And you have like the Byzantines, and you have the Vandals, and you have like were hyenas, and you have this
What?
dragon god named Gurzel, who was actually a god worshipped probably by the Amazigh. I'm not really sure actually, but yeah, the Vandals are like a bunch of bastards, and
Is this a
uh,
novel?
yeah, it's called Gurzel. Gurzil. There's a sequel called Bad and Hill that came out too. There's supposed to be more. I thought the third one was supposed to come out this year, but I haven't heard about it for a minute. So
Ah, look at you out there blurbing all the good stuff.
yeah, well, it's technically I think the authors describe it as a grimdark. So I mean, I like just the dark historical stuff. I mean, there's a little
Yeah,
like
I know you like
little
that story.
stuff, like grimdark stuff, but yeah, it's good. I like it, and they're really
So
short too. So
yeah, so I have to check it out. But I would like to ask you, Liam, what was your favorite story of this section? I don't know if you
ooh.
know.
I'm not sure I know, to be honest. Okay, because I liked Thoughts and Prayers, or at least it made me think a lot. It had a lot of stuff going on for it. Um, I like ac- what's it called? Axiomatic? Is that what it was?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, you liked, and you also liked. Oh, I forgot what the Time of Day, the one with the
yeah. And
church.
I like I Can Transform You. I think Time of Day might have been my favorite though. Um, and Branded's funny, but I don't know if I'd say it's my favorite. But
Yeah,
um, I think Time of Day might take the cake.
that
I'm
does
not
not
100%
surprise me.
sure, but yeah. So I'm not sure. I enjoyed this section just about as much as the first section. I feel like I
Ah,
had a more obvious winner in the first section, even though I can't remember what it is right
what
now.
was your winner in the first? Yeah, was it the one? I don't even remember. I don't even remember.
That's so
But
long ago. We've read so many stories.
yes, yeah, but I definitely like that one. I liked Immolation a lot. But like I said, but yeah, but like I said, I liked Time of Day as well, and I liked Immolation.
and I like Cyberpunk. That's a good classic one too. I mean,
Yeah,
and then Hostile Takeover is a good absurd one if you like that stuff. So I mean,
I
like,
liked Rats. Yeah, this one
yeah, yeah.
I feel like this one had a much more absurd stuff than the last section.
Yeah, it did
Like
feel a
just
little bit
like
more absurd.
wild shit.
Less sex, but more absurdity maybe.
Yeah. So and then yeah, that was good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I hopefully part 3 is fun. We start off with the Fritz Leiber story in part 3. So
Part 3 will be here tomorrow. No, but it won't be. I will be. Yes, I'm. Yes, we will be here much sooner. I
we're staying
promise.
up all night to read part 3.
All
Uh,
right.
and screw sleep.
Actually,
So
Is Fritz Lieber like the first one, or
he's the
Fritz
very first
Leiber
because
rather?
he's the good job. No,
Thank you.
he's
I'm
the
sorry.
he's the pre-cyberpunk one in that section. So it says 1974 because that's when it was in this bind up here, the best of Fritz Leiber.
Mhm.
But it's from 1950.
Hold
So
on.
it should be the oldest story by far, actually, in the collection. So
And you caught that yourself, I imagine. So is
I
that a
did,
typo?
yes.
Oh
I,
my
I don't
goodness.
know. I don't know, but
Oh my
I know when you
goodness.
go to the back, and it has all like the copyright information. It
Yeah.
mentions 1950, so I don't know what happened there.
Let me see if
So
The Kindle says. That's a good point because if you shout it out, they would change the ebook, wouldn't they?
I think I mentioned it when I tweeted it that I got this book, and that's how we got into the conversation
Did
about the
yeah.
book. And I tagged Shurin, I think, but I don't think he's active on Twitter anymore.
Oh, okay. Did he
Since
tell
it's
you
become
never?
X.
Did
So
you tell him to? Did he tell you to never talk to him again since you
never talk to me
critiquing?
again. This random person is
Yeah.
harassing me.
So it's not. Yeah, mine says 1974. So basically, what you're saying is literally not 1974.
But yeah, but if you go to the very back on page 1113, Fritz Leiber, Coming Traction by Fritz Leiber, 1950, by the estate of the author, first published in Galaxy, November 1950. So,
have you read that one before?
I have. I love that story. It's great.
Okay.
It is awesome. It'll probably be the best story in the entire collection. So,
you think so? More than the life of a cyberbar? Because I think you're
okay. Well, you probably won't find it better than that. But,
but what can I find better than that? Really? What is better than that?
No, I really like Coming Attraction. It does, in a lot of ways, feel very cyberpunk, but it's from 1950, which is one of the reasons it's super cool.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of ways, it's more of just a satirical dystopian sci-fi that Leiber was writing a lot of at the time, but it does presage a lot of cyberpunk stuff. Like, there's even microwaves in the thing. I mean, like, in 1950, microwaves were not much of a thing at all. So
yeah, I actually have a few classics of Leiber that you mentioned in one of your things that I like. And hold on, did you say that?
I mentioned Coming Attraction in my the King of Speculative Fiction video.
Okay.
And I mentioned, I think, A Pail of Air as well. And I mentioned a lot, obviously.
Okay. So. Yeah, I look forward to, well, I guess that'll be next time. So
that'll be the next story, sir. You're going to get some Fritz Leiber.
Finally, and that's what section is it? That's culture?
Yeah, that's culture.
No idea how that's different from society, but I'll find out.
We shall see. Well, historically speaking, they were different words, actually.
But, of course.
These days, they're basically the same thing.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how that works with this book.
So, yeah, I'm interested to see. And, even though they messed up on the date there, I don't really know what happened there. I'm glad they included it. It's better that they included it and messed up on the date than not have it. But I'm kind of, a little miffed that it's just like, 1974, that makes it look like it came after that Delaney story, and it didn't. So,
is he known for anything that came out in post 70s? Like, was he writing
Leiber?
Yeah.
Like in the 80s, or do you mean like?
Yeah, does he have like 70s? Anything? Yeah, like does he have anything like that's very acclaimed by him that was written post like 70s?
Acclaimed in the 80s? In the 80s, no. In the 70s, yes.
Still doing Grey Mouser stuff?
Yeah, he did that through the 80s. But he just wasn't as active of a writer in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say he probably wasn't as good either. So the 70s is really when he starts to drop off in some ways. I mean, like I in my essay, I actually mentioned the Frostmourne stream by him a lot. And that came out in 76. Our Lady Darkness came out in 77, which is a great novel.
Is that a horror novel?
It is a horror novel, yeah. Taken from the title is taken from something de profundis, Mater Tenebrarum or whatever.
Thomas de Quintes Suspiria de Profundis.
Yeah.
I just happened to look it up. I don't have that. I was just looking.
It's very Jungian horror, if that makes sense. In San Francisco, it has Clark Ashton Smith as a character, which is cool as hell, I think.
That is cool.
And but it only has because it's modern setting, so the character of Clark Ashton Smith is through journal entries. So kind of more Lovecraftian in that sense. And the main character is essentially Fritz Leiber. His name's Franz. And he's a writer and he's a widower, which Leiber was at the time he wrote the novel. So and he's an alcoholic, which Leiber also wasn't writing the novel. But so.
And this is it wasn't really good. You mentioned it in your Darkness, you mentioned it in your other essay, really, your video essay.
Yeah. No, Leiber is. I have a problem. I like Leiber too much. I named my son Fritz, so yeah.
Which I think is cool. I think that's awesome.
I think it's cool too. I just think that I'm going to start annoying people at some point. They're like, this guy literally never shuts up about Fritz Leiber. I mean, I'm in this Lovecraft class, and every moment I get, I talk about Fritz Leiber, right? I wrote my essay on Fritz Leiber. So I mean, more than I wrote on Lovecraft.
Well, yeah, you do have a problem. Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. But yes, no, it is a problem. But the idea is that I want to eventually be able one day. I would love to be able to teach a class like that Lovecraft class, but on Leiber. I think
you will. So you will.
One day.
I think so, and I think that's who else would teach it. As everyone knows, you are the foremost authority.
I don't know about the foremost, but I hope to be.
At least the foremost
At
authority
least the
on.
foremost authority online. It seems like
I
sometimes.
would think so. Until I come in, but I have a
Yes.
lot of.
When will Tim's totality arrive? It is in part here, of course, on Liam's Lyceum. But
Or
we are just rambling at this point.
we are. I
Um,
apologize.
we did enjoy society though. So and we will get to culture at some point. We are not quite halfway through the book, but we still have 3 parts to go. But
We have
this is
3
the
parts to
longest
go.
part. The last part is much shorter than the other ones too. So um,
Post
we
Cyberpunk.
shall. Yep. So
All
we
right.
shall see how those go when we get there. So, anyways, thanks for watching, anyone. If you made it this far, this is a slightly shorter than the first video. So, yeah, Liam from Liam's Lyceum. You can check out Tim. He's of Iker on of _ Iker on Twitter or X. And
Yes. Yes.
yes, and then he's got a story in House from the Wreckage, and which is good. I think that's the only one you have right now. But you have one accepted, I think, from Cosmic Horror Monthly, and then that one I'm wow, blanking on what it's called right now. But
spanking on. Yeah, but
yeah,
I guess that's how it goes if you write things, and I pretend to do so. Like 1 is in print, and 3 are not out. So that's how it goes.
it
But
is how it
yeah,
goes.
thank you for having me, Liam. I can say that because it's the second time. I always have a fun time here when I'm on your channel.
That's good. That's what we're here for. But
Yes.
yeah, we'll catch the people watching later, I guess. So.
Yeah.